Chapter 1885. That giant was emitting a deathly aura. It was actually a resurrected ancient giant. Its body emitted a shocking fiery aura, very similar to the aura that Su Fong sensed when the prehistoric inflammation erupted. Primal spirit flame. This resurrected ancient giant had actually devoured a cluster of primal spirit flame. The giant's true strength was at most peak ninth firmament true god. Moreover, this kind of ancient giant, other than having an incomparably powerful physical body, didn't have the ability to release divine abilities. However, at this moment, the resurrected giant that had fused with a cluster of primal spirit flame displayed strength that wasn't weaker than a fifth firmament celestial god. Other than having a powerful physical body, it was also constantly spitting out shocking fiery flames, burning the ground of the valley into pools of magma. Its physical strength also contained powerful fire attribute energy. The energy contained in the primordial spirit flame was extraordinary. It could turn an ordinary resurrected giant into such a powerful being. However, the dozen or so Eastern Mountain Dojo disciples beside Dongshan Wei were also quite extraordinary. Among them, there was a special disciple, while the rest were core disciples. The weakest was a peak ninth firmament true god, while the strongest special disciple was a fourth firmament celestial god. In addition, these dozen or so Eastern Mountain Dojo disciples joined forces to form a formation, trapping the resurrected giant. At the same time, they activated layers of mountain peaks to crush the resurrected giant. Cracks appeared on the giant's body, from which fiery red magma-like blood constantly flowed out, flowing on the ground and melting the rocks on the ground. Dongshan Wei shouted loudly from behind, "Hurry up and get rid of this giant." There's news that the prehistoric inflammation is in the depths of the Suiyu Cave. Divine Sect and experts from other factions are all rushing over there. If we're late, we won't even have soup to drink. Prehistoric inflammation actually appeared in the Suiyu Cave. Su Fong's eyes lit up. However, Su Fong didn't have any intention of moving. Dongshan Wei nearly caused him to die in the belly of the sunflower water mermaid. This debt had to be settled no matter what. There was also Mo Yuntian, who was eyeing covetously from the opposite ridge. Furthermore, Su Fong did not believe that Kuan Su's divine sects, special disciples, and Sanskrit geniuses from other factions would be able to detect prehistoric inflammation in a short period of time. Su Fong changed into an ordinary Taoist robe. Then, using his great perfection ability, he changed his appearance and waited for an opportunity to attack. Dongshan Wei, this foppish son of a rich family, also wants to dabble in prehistoric inflammation? When Mo Yuntan, who was hiding on a mountain ridge like a mantis stalking a cicada, heard Dongshan Wei's words, his eyes suddenly lit up. His heart was also burning up. Once I get this primordial desolate spirit flame, I will rush over to the Suiyu Cave. I'm also a person with great luck. Maybe I have a chance to become the biggest winner. At that time, I will definitely be valued by the Divine Sect and obtain a spot to participate in the Kamiko Hoshino tournament. It will be as easy as flipping my hand, and it will only be a matter of time before I soar to the top. Boom, boom, boom. More than a dozen Eastern Mountain Retreat disciples activated the formation to the extreme. A 300-meter tall mountain peak appeared from the formation, and then, with a terrifying aura that suppressed and sealed everything, it landed on the resurrected giant's body. When a mountain peak formed by the ability disappeared, the resurrected giant's physical body was crushed to pieces. After the dozen or so Eastern Mountain Retreat disciples released this powerful attack together, except for the special disciple, everyone else's faces were pale and their auras were chaotic. It was obvious that they had used up a lot of energy. A fist-sized crimson flame with an ancient aura and an incomparably scorching power of fire flew out of the resurrected giant's shattered body. It was the primordial spirit flame formed by the power of fire that had exploded from the prehistoric inflammation. An Eastern Mountain Retreat disciple took out a Tao bottle. After injecting magic power, it released a suction force, and the primordial spirit flame disappeared into the bottle with a whoosh. Give it to me. If I collect more primordial spirit flames, I might have a chance to go to the star below divine realm and participate in the divine child tournament. Ha ha! Don Shanwei laughed proudly. Unexpectedly, at this moment, a sword light with a cold aura flashed and cut off the wrist of the Eastern Mountain Ashram disciple who was collecting the primitive spiritual flames. The disciple's hand fell to the ground along with the bottle he was holding. Then, Mo Yuntian charged over like a beast pouncing on its prey. Mo Yuntian, how dare you steal the Eastern Mountain Retreat's primordial spirit flame? The special disciple of the Eastern Mountain Retreat shouted coldly and jumped to block Mo Yuntian's path. The rules of the primordial ruins allow you to steal other people's results. Why can't I steal the Eastern Mountain Retreat's primordial spirit flame? Mo Yuntian snorted inexplicably and activated his flying sword to fight with the special disciple. Another disciple of the Eastern Mountain Ritual Hall made a grabbing motion in the air, and the Tao bottle shot into his hand. Just as the Tao bottle was about to fall into his hand, the special disciple was suddenly pressed down by an invisible force on his body and the surrounding void. Off the Eastern Mountain Retreat, disciple spat out a mouthful of blood. He could no longer maintain his flying state and fell to the ground. The Tao bottle in his hand was also forcibly stripped from his hand by an invisible force. It turned out that Su Fong had used the supreme divine secret life shrinking technique to forcefully steal the primordial spirit flame that belonged to someone else's karmic fate. At the same time, Su Fong also used the divine secret life shrinking technique to conceal his aura. His body was concealed by the invisible power of fate. He jumped down from the ridge and swooped down to grab the Tao bottle in his hand. By the time the divine secret life shrinking technique's power disappeared, Su Fong had already flown away on a low-grade flying sword. Mo Yuntian, you've got the primordial spirit flame. Why haven't you left yet? Su Fong's voice came from afar. Mo Yuntian was stunned. Don Shanwei flew into a rage. Mo Yuntian, you're so despicable. You joined hands with others to steal this young master's primordial spirit flame. This person is not my partner, Mo Yuntian hurriedly explained. However, how could the Eastern Mountain Bodhidharma disciples believe him? However, seizing the prehistoric inflammation was more important. They all leaped through the air and chased after Su Fong. Where did this shameless bastard come from? He actually dares to frame me, Mo Yuntian. If I catch him, I'll definitely pull out his tendons and skin him alive. Mo Yuntian's eyes burned with rage as he controlled a middle-grade flying sword that emitted a dense, cold aura and madly chased in the direction Su Fong had fled. Only Don Shanwei was left in the valley. He was too weak and did not dare to leave the valley alone. He could only stay where he was and wait for the Eastern Mountain Bodhidharma disciples to return. After Su Fong fled more than 50 kilometers away, that special disciple of the Eastern Mountain Bodhidharma had already caught up to less than 300 meters away. He suddenly shot out over 100 rune talismans behind him in one breath. These rune talismans were purchased by Su Fong from the Tong Bao Chamber of Commerce before entering the primeval ruins. Their power was not ordinary. When over 100 rune talismans exploded at the same time, the power released was comparable to the full-powered attack of a peak ninth firmament celestial god expert. It scared that special disciple into turning around and fleeing. The space where the primeval ruins was located was a world created by a supreme divine ability and combined with a formation. Due to the impact of the prehistoric inflammation explosion, the world became unstable. Surpassing the power of celestial god would cause the world to collapse. Su Fong detonated so many rune talismans at the same time. The explosive power practically reached the limit that the primeval ruins world could withstand. A series of loud explosions shook the heavens and the earth. The aftershocks of the explosion swept through a radius of several dozen kilometers. The power shook the heavens. Even cracks appeared in the void. The natural aura of heaven and earth violently shook. The storm set off by the explosion of the rune talismans also affected Su Fong. He felt a sharp pain in his back. His flesh was badly mangled. His blood and qi were surging. However, he also borrowed the force of the impact to explosively increase his strength. Then he controlled his flying sword and dived into the forest on the ground. He slightly activated the life, shrinking art to conceal his aura. At the same time, he activated his wood attribute Divine Might and fused with a towering tree. His entire person seemed to have completely disappeared from the world. The Eastern Mountain Retreat disciples chased after him. Mo Fenghua also followed closely behind. However, they could not find any trace of Su Fong. Mo Yuntian, hand over the primeval spirit flames. The special disciple of the Eastern Mountain Retreat roared furiously. He joined forces with the other disciples to attack Mo Yuntian. Mo Yuntian's strength was stronger than any of these Eastern Mountain Retreat disciples. Otherwise, he would not have dared to have designs on the primeval spirit flames. However, he was unable to resist the joint forces of over a dozen disciples. No matter how he explained, it was difficult to explain clearly. Now, even if he jumped into the Mystic Lake, it would be difficult to clear his name. He could only flee. How could the Eastern Mountain Retreat disciples be willing to give up? They chased after Mo Yuntian relentlessly. Half an hour later, Su Fong controlled his silver-streaked sword and returned the way he came. Soon, he returned to the valley. Dong Shanwei, Su Fong shouted coldly and embarrassedly. At this time, Su Fong had already returned to Mo Fenghua's appearance. Due to using the life-shrinking art, he had consumed nearly 30% of his life force. This made his appearance look like a middle-aged man in his 30s, with a strand of silver hair fluttering at his temples. However, Dong Shanwei still recognized Su Fong at a glance. He immediately fell into intense shock. Mo Fenghua. Impossible. You were swallowed by that water attribute spirit monster. How can you still be alive? This is impossible. I'm standing in front of you now. What's impossible? Su Fong said coldly and embarrassedly. You didn't expect this, did you? Every dog has its day. Your little life will fall into my hands. Dong Shanwei trembled. However, when he thought of the rules of the trial, he became unyielding again. Even if you escape death, so what? At most, you'll injure me. Don't tell me you dare to kill me. Every trial disciple had a Jade archive on them. As long as they died, the Jade archive would automatically record the scene of their death. Therefore, no one dared to directly kill them. When you gave the order to attack me, you were destined to die. Su Fong smiled faintly. If you dare to kill me, aren't you afraid that the divine sect will investigate? At that time, even the 3 divine kings won't be able to protect you. Seeing the fierce killing intent in Su Fong's eyes, Dong Shanwei panicked. You don't need to worry about that. You could die peacefully. Chapter 1886. The Heavens Divination Mystic Unravel was a supreme ability to deduce the heavenly Tao and observe the nature of the world. Using the Heavens Divination, Mystic unravel the veil of the mysterious heavenly Tao and pry into the faintly discernible mysteries of heaven. It was almost at the same level as the life, shrinking technique, mysterious and profound. 8. Read. Book. Oh. Ever since Su Fong obtained the Heavens Divination Mystic Unravel, he had been persisting in cultivating. However, he had not cultivated for long. So the Heavens Divination Mystic Unravel he had previously grasped were all comprehended by immortal Elder Tianji, until the purple cloud Dharma spirit transformed, causing Su Fong's ability to communicate with the heavenly Tao and control nature to multiply. Only then did Su Fong have a deeper understanding of the Heavens Divination Mystic Unravel. What Su Fong used now was a supreme ability of the Heavens Divination Mystic Unravel. It messed up the mysteries of heaven, causing others to be unable to deduce the mysteries of heaven and cause and effect. In an instant, the mysteries of heaven were in chaos, like the surface of a calm lake suddenly being stirred up, becoming chaotic and difficult to deduce. Whoosh! A mid-grade flying sword was spat out by Su Fong. In order to not arouse suspicion, Su Fong did not activate the Silver Streak Sword, but took out a very ordinary mid-grade flying sword. Mo Fenghua. This young master has a divine artifact protecting him. How can you kill this young master? Dongshan Wei sneered malevolently. He activated his defensive divine artifact, and a layer of green divine armor immediately appeared on his body. It was actually a natal divine artifact. Can't kill you. Su Fong sneered disdainfully. He activated the purple cloud Dharma spirit, and a controlling divine aura enveloped the flying sword, almost completely activating the flying sword's power. Chi. The sword light easily tore apart Dongshan Wei's divine armor like tofu, splitting his body into two halves. Dongshan Wei's natal divine artifact was powerful, but with his strength, how much power could he activate? Su Fong, on the other hand, activated the mid-grade divine artifact to the extreme. Even a celestial god would have to avoid it, so it was naturally easy to break through Dongshan Wei's defense. Mo Fenghua, you can actually control a medial-grade divine artifact. Impossible. If you dare to kill me, the Dongshan clan will definitely not let you off. Because deities had powerful divine bodies and boundless life force, Dongshan Wei did not die even after being cut in two. He looked at Su Fong in horror, his eyes filled with disbelief. The Dongshan clan can't trace it back to me. Even if they can, what can they do to me? Su Fong smiled coldly. The flying sword spun around, and the sword light wrapped around Dongshan Wei's neck, cutting off his head and neck. Whoosh! A jade archive flew out from Dongshan Wei's corpse and disappeared into the void. Su Fong took Dongshan Wei's storage ring, then rode the Silver Streak sword and quickly left the valley. After flying thousands of miles in different directions, Su Fong found a cave cliff and hid there. Creating a formation in the cave, Su Fong transformed into the Yellow Springs Blood Sea, devouring pills, spirit items, and the life force of the strange fish to recover the life force he'd used to activate the Heavenly Secret Life Contraction art. Activating the Heavenly Secret Life Contraction art consumed life force, while using the Heavenly Secret Unravel consumed fortune. Although he couldn't use these two supreme divine abilities as he wished, Su Fong had ways to make up for it, so he wasn't worried about anything. After about 5 years, Su Fong finally recovered all the life force he'd used up, but a small portion of the strange fish's blood had also been consumed. Su Fong then took out the Tao bottle he'd plundered from the Eastern Mountain Bodhidharma disciples. Primeval Spirit Flame. Removing the seal on the Tao bottle, a scorching aura swept through the entire cave. Then, a fiery light shot out from the bottle, condensing into a scarlet flame. Su Fong's eyes suddenly became scorching hot. After coming to the Kuan Su divine sect for so many years, I persisted in cultivating the 9 Yang 9 transformations. Together with a drop of essence blood from the 3 divine kings, 56 Yang meridians are about to be born. The only thing missing is an opportunity. This primeval spirit flame is the opportunity to birth a new Yang meridian. Su Fong put his palms together and activated the power of yin and yang. Then he separated his palms, and the power of yin and yang and the pure yang true fire turned into a wave of fire that tightly wrapped around the primeval spirit flame, then seeped into the depths of the spirit flame. His consciousness followed the power of yin and yang and the pure yang true fire into the spirit flame. He sensed that the spirit flame was filled with an astonishing aura that was enough to burn a peak 9th firmament celestial god like Count Chon. With such terrifying fire elemental power, even if the disciples who enter the primeval ruins to train gather the spirit flame, they wouldn't dare to fuse with it. No wonder the Kuan Su divine sect allowed so many disciples to gather the spirit flame without taking any measures to prevent the disciples from taking the spirit flame for themselves. Even transcendents, celestials wouldn't dare to easily fuse with the primeval spirit flame. However, to me, the primeval spirit flame is a supreme spiritual item for cultivating the Yang Meridian and the Fire Cloud Emperor physique. Su Fong smiled confidently. Then his consciousness continued to seep into the depths of the spirit flame. Inside the primeval spirit flame, there was an extremely weak trace of world origin force that contained the great Tao of fire. It was slightly different from the great Tao of fire in the outside world. It had an ancient aura, but it was extremely terrifying. Prehistoric inflammation was born from the depths of the primeval world, and the spirit flame was the scattered flames of prehistoric inflammation when it was born. It was normal for it to contain world origin force. It was also this trace of world origin force that allowed the primeval spirit flame to possess such astonishing fire elemental power. How terrifying would a true prehistoric inflammation be? Su Fong continuously activated the pure yang primeval flame, mainly the power of yin and yang. It poured into the spirit flame in large amounts, incessantly burning and fusing with it. The power of yin and yang could fuse with any energy in the world. Gradually, after the spirit flame fused with the power of yin and yang and the pure yang primeval flame, it became closer to Su Fong without any feeling of rejection. At this moment, Su Fong's mind moved, and the spirit flame slowly floated into Su Fong's palm, where it was absorbed into Su Fong's inner world. Qi. After absorbing the spirit flame into the yang meridian and fusing with it, it didn't take long for the yang meridian to explode with a shocking change. Su Fong was pleasantly surprised. The 56th yang meridian is about to be born so soon. Qi, qi, qi. Therefore, Su Fong began to condense all the energy in his body and began to attack the meridian that was about to be born as a yang meridian, forming a crazily burning pure yang primeval flame that engulfed the yin-yang Tao wheel. In an instant, all the energy in his inner world seemed to be absorbed by this meridian, brewing a shocking, explosive momentum. Again and again, under the onslaught, boom! The Tao Palace of heaven and earth shook tremendously. A pure yang xian guang swept across and engulfed the entire Tao Palace of heaven and earth. Finally, with the momentum of a flash flood, it rushed into the 56th meridian that was being attacked. Qi, qi, qi. After a series of crazy tremors, the 56th meridian suddenly quieted down, finally turning into a jade-like yang meridian. After coming to the myriad worlds, another yang meridian was finally born. The newly born yang meridian approached the last yang meridian in the Tao Palace of heaven and earth. Its tail connected, forming the Tao Palace of heaven and earth made up of 56 yang meridians. Then, the yang meridian and the world tree disappeared into his inner world. The small world and his inner world returned to the chaotic state when the heavens and earth were first created, but it was more profound than before. With the help of a cluster of spiritual flames, I have successfully formed a yang meridian. It will be difficult for me to form another yang meridian with the help of spiritual flames. However, spiritual flames are still very useful for my cultivation of the fire cloud imperial physique. At the same time, it is also a result of training. Therefore, I need to collect more prehistoric spiritual flames. Su Fong planned in his heart. Then he settled down in the cave to recover the yang qi that was used to form the 56th yang meridian. It's time to go to the Sui Yu cave. Su Fong counted with his fingers. This time, he had used close to 10 years to recover his vitality and form the 56th yang meridian. Whether the news of prehistoric inflammation appearing in the depths of the Sui Yu cave was true or not, Su Fong had to make a trip there. It was a pleasant surprise to be able to obtain the prehistoric inflammation. Even if he couldn't obtain the prehistoric inflammation, Su Fong had to make a trip to the Sui Yu cave in order to collect more spiritual flames. Right now, the Sui Yu cave was definitely filled with experts. The more experts there were, the more prehistoric inflammation they had. The prehistoric ruins was too big. How many spiritual flames could Su Fong collect in 500 years? The easiest and fastest way was to snatch them from the hands of other disciples. Su Fong changed into a black robe and took out a cloak to cover his entire head. This cloak was a divine tool that Su Fong had purchased from the Tong Bao Chamber of Commerce before entering the prehistoric ruins. It only had one use, and that was to cover his face and block the senses of other gods. This training in the prehistoric ruins was incomparably dangerous. Su Fong had no choice but to expose his hidden methods and hide his identity. After leaving the cave cliff, Su Fong rode on the silver-streaked sword and flew towards the Sui cave. In order to not attract attention, Su Fong had Gue Ge release a poisonous gas around his body. It made him look like a god that cultivated the Tao of poison. Even the silver-streaked sword gleam was purposely seeped into the poisonous gas, changing its color and causing the poisonous gas to rumble. The distance to the Sui cave was over 100 million miles. Su Fong's silver-streaked sword speed reached the heavenly deity realm. However, with such a long distance and the occasional attacks from various big goblin and resurrected ancient gods, Su Fong had no choice but to take a detour. Hence, it was impossible for him to reach the Sui cave in a short period of time. Around 20 years later, when Su Fong was still halfway to the Sui cave, sounds of battle could be heard from the front. Su Fong rode on the silver-streaked sword and flew close to the ground. An hour later, he arrived at a plain. This place was clearly affected by the explosion caused by the prehistoric inflammation. The ground was covered in boiling lava, and the temperature was frighteningly high. Black smoke billowed. Over a dozen gods from other divine realms surrounded over 100 Kun Su divine sect disciples in the center. Over a dozen people surrounded over 100 people. The scene looked a little ridiculous. However, these 100 over Kun Su divine sect disciples were all core disciples. As for the foreign geniuses, they were all at the level of special disciples. Such a scene was not strange at all. Among the Kun Su divine sect disciples, over a dozen were injured. One of them had even fallen. The others were all infuriated, but no one dared to make a move. Hand over all the prehistoric spirit flames in your hands. Otherwise, this will be your burial ground. Chapter 1887. This foreign young god was thin and weak, as if a gust of wind could blow him away. His aura was empty, and his cultivation had reached the sixth heaven of the heaven god realm. He was stronger than most of the special disciples of Kun Su divine sect. Only some of the top special disciples could compare to him. Before entering the chaos ruins, Su Fong had seen this person before. He wasn't a genius from the star billow divine realm. As for which divine realm he was from, Su Fong had no idea. He didn't know what kind of agreement Kun Su had reached with these forces to allow them to enter the chaos ruins to collect spiritual flames. Now, they had joined forces to rob over 100 Kun Su divine sect disciples. They were extremely arrogant. You dare to kill people in the chaos ruins? Aren't you afraid of Kun Su divine sect's punishment? A Kun Su divine sect disciple said angrily, "What's the big deal about killing a few of you core disciples? Will Kun Su divine sect defend me and return to the wind divine realm for you?" The thin young god sneered in disdain. He didn't put Kun Su divine sect in his eyes at all. Here, a Kun Su divine sect disciple took out a Tao bottle and flew it to the thin young god. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Another 3 disciples handed over 3 Tao bottles. Not bad. You've collected so many chaos spirit flames. You're not too useless. The thin young god checked them and revealed a happy expression. "You, get over here." He saw Su Fong in the distance and pointed at Su Fong. There was no place to hide here, and Su Fong didn't plan to hide either. He slowly flew over. "Hand over your primal spirit flame." The skinny god from the Huifeng divine realm shouted in a domineering manner. "I don't have any chaos spirit flames," Su Fong said honestly. This wasn't a lie. Maybe it was because of his bad luck that he didn't encounter any chaos spirit flames along the way. The thin god refused to believe him. "Take out your Tao bottle." Su Fong smiled faintly and took out his Tao bottle to give it to the thin god. What a piece of trash! Seeing that the Tao bottle was empty, the skinny deity angrily took it back. "You're such a piece of trash, yet you're wearing a cloak and pretending to be a mysterious expert. I hate people like you the most. Take off your cloak." Su Fong obediently took off his cloak, revealing a sallow face, as if he had just recovered from a serious illness. It was not the face of Su Fong, or Mo Fenghua. He did not conceal his aura either. He was just a fourth firmament true god. Go! The thin god was about to leave with a dozen other experts from the god realm. Suddenly, Su Fong said, "Gentlemen, can you lend me your primitive spirit flames?" Everyone was stunned. "You want to snatch my spirit flame?" The thin god laughed wildly as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. "I'll break your neck and leave you with only one breath left." The skinny god's body swayed and a gust of wind whistled by. A whirlwind swirled under his feet, and he appeared right in front of Su Fong. Not only was his speed inconceivably fast, there was also a feeling that the wind left no traces behind, making it hard to capture his movements. "Great Tao Wind?" Su Fong raised his eyebrows. Wind was also one of the natural forces of heaven and earth. It was swift, graceful, erratic, traceless, and difficult to capture. Therefore, gods who cultivated the great Tao of wind were the most difficult to deal with. Qi. A poisonous smoke surged out of Su Fong's body. The poison corroded the surrounding air, causing sizzling sounds. The thin god revealed a shocked expression. His figure seemed to be unaffected by gravity as he quickly floated backward. There's actually a disciple who cultivates the great Tao of poison in Kuan Su's divine sect. The thin god was not surprised and seemed somewhat fearful. The other disciples of Kuan Su's divine sect were also at a loss. The gods of Kuan Su's divine sect mainly cultivated the great Tao of earth. It wasn't that they didn't cultivate other great Taos, but they had never heard of anyone who cultivated the great Tao of poison. For gods who cultivated the great Tao of poison, other than the fact that they could control deadly poison, what was even more frightening was that these gods often had twisted personalities due to their constant contact with deadly poison. They were very difficult to deal with, so they were often seen as people of the evil path. "Hand over the primal spirit flame that you just snatched, as well as what you have on you, and I can spare your lives," Su Fong said coldly. He was surrounded by poisonous gas and looked very frightening. A weakling at the fourth sky of true god realm actually wants to snatch food from the mouth of a heavenly god realm expert. "You really don't know what's good for you." Gale Whirlwind. The skinny celestial sneered and unleashed his skills. Gusts of whirlwinds whizzed around him and condensed into numerous wind blades. They were like a windmill that could kill everything as they pounced towards Su Fong. Su Fong released billowing poisonous gas. Just as it approached the thin and weak god, it was swept aside by the whirlwind and couldn't do anything to him. "Obediently stretch out your neck and let me break it, and I'll spare your life," the thin and weak god said with a sinister smile. Su Fong suddenly formed a seal. His body was shrouded by a mysterious power of time that was hard to detect. Extremely fine and mysterious ripples appeared in the void around him. The thin and weak god's speed was unbelievably fast. He rushed to Su Fong's side and controlled the whirlwind to envelop Su Fong. He clearly saw that the attack was going to land on Su Fong, but it ended up hitting nothing. It turned out that Su Fong had used the great Tao of time, causing the flow of time around him to change. At this moment, he was not at the same time as the skinny god, so any attack from the skinny god would not be effective. This was the great benefit that Su Fong received after the transformation of the purple cloud lost spirit. It allowed him to have a deeper understanding of Shu Yunkong's great Tao of time. He could already use a portion of the great Tao of time. Suppress. The difference in time allowed Su Fong enough time to dodge the attack of the skinny god and get behind him. More than a dozen rune talismans were shot out by Su Fong and detonated at the same time. Qi. Qi. Streaks of sharp sword qi converged into terrifying waves and swept towards the skinny god, instantly tearing the whirlwind around him into pieces. A dozen streaks of sword qi hit his back and pierced through his chest. A dozen holes immediately appeared on his divine body. "Ah, shameless thing!" The thin god from the Huifeng divine realm let out a heart-wrenching scream. His divine body was pierced by a dozen streaks of sword qi, and the fine sword had destroyed the insides of his divine body. Moreover, a streak of sword qi had pierced through his heart. With such severe injuries, even if he did not die, his vitality would be greatly damaged. Su Fong flashed forward and controlled a poisonous smoke to circle around him. He said coldly, "Take out the primeval spirit flame or die. It's your choice." The skinny god was still unruly. "I'm from the Hui Feng divine realm. So what if you're the son of the realm lord? Now that you're in my hands, your life is in my hands." The dozen or so geniuses following the skinny god roared in unison and pounced on Su Fong. Su Fong controlled a poisonous smoke and wrapped it around the skinny god. Sizzle! The skinny god was already severely injured, so his divine body was weak. Coupled with the terrifying corrosive power of Gui's poison, his flesh started to peel off layer by layer. It was a ghastly sight. The dozen or so geniuses stopped abruptly and looked at Su Fong in horror. "Here!" The skinny god took out a Dao bottle from his body. Together with his own bottle, there were a total of 5 Dao bottles. "And yours!" Su Fong's cold eyes swept across the dozen or so geniuses. The skinny god was clearly their leader. Now that he had fallen into Su Fong's hands, they had no choice but to obediently take out all their Dao bottles. There were a total of 3 Dao bottles sealed with prehistoric inflammation, and they all handed them to Su Fong. Su Fong collected the primeval spirit flame in all the Dao bottles into Dong Shanwei's Dao bottle. After a quick count, there were as many as 13 bunches. With so many primeval spirit flames, it's enough for my fire cloud emperor physique to evolve once again. My cultivation will also increase rapidly. It's still the easiest way to snatch them. Su Fong was overjoyed and put away the Dao bottles with a smile. "No need to thank me." Su Fong put away the poisonous smoke and flew away on his flying sword. The geniuses from the other god realms were afraid of Su Fong's poison and the mysterious power of time. They didn't dare to chase after Su Fong. As for the 100 or so Kuan Su divine sect disciples, they were shocked and surprised, but they were also very happy. Su Fong wasn't in a hurry to fuse with the primeval spirit flames. That would take a lot of time. The Chaos Ruins trial was related to the Godchild competition, so the trial results were very important to Su Fong. In addition, Su Fong was still worried about the prehistoric inflammation, so he didn't dare to delay and went straight to the Suiyu Cave. About 20 years later, he wasn't far from the Suiyu Cave. Along the way, Su Fong had encountered countless dangers. He had encountered powerful big goblin that he had never heard of before, as well as resurrected gods. If not for Su Fong's various divine abilities and his ample preparation for the Chaos Ruins trial, with Su Fong's current strength, he would have fallen in the Chaos Ruins. However, Su Fong's luck wasn't bad. Along the way, he had collected many spiritual items and alchemy materials that couldn't be found in the outside world, as well as some ores and gems that could only be found in the Chaos world. He had also successfully collected 2 clusters of primeval spirit flames, which could be considered a bountiful harvest. Along the way, he had also met many trial takers. Because they were afraid of Su Fong's poison, there weren't any conflicts. As he got closer to the Suiyu Cave, he met more and more trial takers. Su Fong transformed back into Mo Fenghua's appearance and swaggered towards the Suiyu Cave. Outside the Suiyu Cave, there were countless Kuan Su's divine sect disciples guarding the surroundings. Each of the great Dao halls had their own areas. Su Fong was preparing to go to a mountain occupied by Xianling Dao Hall's disciples to inquire about prehistoric inflammation. At this moment, a rainbow flew over from the sky with hundreds and thousands of gods in hot pursuit. To be chased by so many people, it's clearly a powerful person. Mo Yintian? Su Fong was startled. He didn't expect that the person being chased was actually Mo Yintian. Mo Yintian, you actually dared to team up with others to steal my Eastern Mountain Dao Hall's treasures. You even killed Dongshan Wei's young master. Eastern Mountain Dao Hall's disciples will not rest until you die. Chapter 1888. Back then, he had a sudden inspiration and casually tricked Mo Yintian. He didn't expect the Eastern Mountain Dojo's disciples to actually believe it, and even blame Dongshan Wei's death on Mo Yintian. Su Fong was both shocked and stunned, but soon after, he laughed involuntarily. Mo Yuntan miserably fled to the sky above a mountain range and loudly shouted, Xianling Dojo's disciples, why haven't you come and helped me yet? Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Mo Yuntian was Xianling Dojo's #1 disciple. Among the Xianling Dojo's disciples, his words carried enormous weight. Immediately, tens of thousands of Xianling Dojo's disciples flew into the sky and protected Mo Yuntian. Seeing this, the thousands of Eastern Mountain Dojo's disciples that were chasing Mo Yuntian no longer dared to pursue. Mo Yuntian finally escaped with his life. As expected of Xianling Dojo's #1 disciple, Kuan Su's divine sect's special disciple, being chased by the Eastern Mountain Dojo's disciples for dozens of years, Mo Yuntian being able to keep his life was undoubtedly a miracle. He only had a few holes on his body that were difficult to heal. Half of his face was burnt and his right arm's bones and flesh were shattered. He looked a bit miserable, but that was all. Eastern Mountain Dojo, this young master was nearly killed by you, and now you're chasing after Xianling Dojo's #1 disciple. You've gone too far. Su Fong flew over and angrily roared at the Eastern Mountain Dojo's disciples. Mo Fenghua actually didn't die. Impossible. I personally saw him being devoured by a water-type spirit that almost surpassed the heavenly deity realm. How could he still be alive? The dozen or so Eastern Mountain Dojo's disciples that followed Dongshan Wei were also chasing after Mo Yuntian. When they saw Su Fong, it was as if they had seen a ghost. I, Mo Fenghua, am blessed with good fortune. What can a mere spirit do to me? Su Fong proudly sneered. Then he aggressively roared, what is this young master's status right now? Your Eastern Mountain Dojo actually dared to ignore the rules of the training and almost killed me. Mo Yuntian killed Dongshan Wei to avenge me, and that's right and proper. You actually dare to chase after him. Each and every one of you deserve to die. Mo Yuntian's divine light instantly changed. This was equivalent to confirming that he had killed Dongshan Wei. Dongshan Wei's grandfather was Kuan Su, the Grand Elder of Divine Sect. Just killing Dongshan Wei in violation of the rules was a crime that Mo Yuntian couldn't bear. It would be difficult for him to escape the punishment of Divine Sect, let alone the Dongshan clan. Mo Yuntian felt as if there was an incomparably huge black pot on top of his head, causing the entire world to suddenly turn dark. Without waiting for him to explain, Su Fong turned to the disciples of the Eastern Mountain Ashram and shouted arrogantly, just you wait. When this trial is over, my grandfather will never let you go. The third great master will never let you go either. When Su Fong mentioned the 3 divine kings, it immediately intimidated the thousands of disciples of the Eastern Mountain Ashram. Unexpectedly, no one dared to refute. The dozen or so disciples of the Eastern Mountain Ashram who attacked Su Fong at the Xianshui Lake were all trembling. They had the support of the ashram, so Xianlingzi didn't need to care. However, what kind of people were the 3 divine kings? Once they were investigated, let alone these disciples, even the Grand Elder of Eastern Mountain wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. At that time, they would definitely be handed over as scapegoats. Su Fong flew towards Mo Yuntian, revealing a grateful expression. He cupped his fists and said, in order to avenge this young master, you actually killed Dongshan Wei. Such righteousness, this young master can't thank you enough. In the past, this young master had some misunderstandings about you. I am truly ashamed, and I apologize to you here. Su Fong continued, when we leave the wilderness ruins, this young master will definitely report to my grandfather and let him heavily reward you. As for the Eastern Mountain Ashram, this young master will support you. You don't need to pay attention to them. Mo Yuntian, you killed Dongshan Wei's young master. This debt will naturally be settled by the upper echelons of the divine sect. Let's go. The disciples of the Eastern Mountain Ashram dispelled the idea of continuing to chase Mo Yuntian and turned around to leave. Mo Yuntian felt as if yellow mud had fallen into his pants. He was extremely depressed, but he had no way to explain himself. He could only swallow the bitter water and slowly enjoy it alone. Numerous disciples of the Xianling ashram surrounded Mo Fenghua and flew towards the mountain range he occupied. There were also hundreds of disciples who stayed behind to protect Su Fang. Although Mo Fenghua was hated by the gods and ghosts of the Xianling ashram, his status was still there. In addition, he was highly regarded by the three divine kings. There were still many disciples who wanted to curry favor with him. Only then did Su Fang begin to size up the Suiyu cave. On the ground, there was a 1,000-mile-wide cave entrance. It was so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. Astonishing flames were spewing out from the depths of the earth. Red light soared into the sky, forming a huge fiery red light pillar. It was extremely spectacular. The Suiyu Cave used to be an extremely important training ground in the Chaos Ruins. From the entrance of the cave, one could reach the depths of the Earth's core. The cave contained large amounts of earth and fire spiritual items, refining materials, gems, and ores. Therefore, every time, there would be countless disciples who would enter to train and search for treasures. This time, the prehistoric inflammation had suddenly erupted. The divine flame, might, was spewing out from the Suiyu Cave, causing the Suiyu Cave to become a forbidden area that even gods couldn't enter. The surroundings were also destroyed by the prehistoric inflammation, turning into a wasteland. At this moment, at least a third of the disciples of the Kuan-Su divine sect that entered the Chaos Ruins to train were gathered around the entrance of the Suiyu Cave. Su Fang asked the disciples of the Xianling ashram. It turned out that every 30 years, an astonishing divine flame would erupt from the depths of the Suiyu Cave. The chaos spiritual flames scattered all over the Chaos Ruins seemed to be summoned and were all sucked into the cave for unknown reasons. Previously, it had erupted twice. Some people took the opportunity to collect large amounts of chaos spiritual flames and reaped a great harvest. Of course, there were also unlucky ones. Thousands of disciples, including dozens of special disciples, relied on their own strength and extraordinary divine artifacts to barge into the Suiyu Cave. In the end, they encountered the divine flame might and were directly sucked into the depths of the Suiyu Cave. No one knew if they were still alive or not. Some people analyzed that the prehistoric inflammation was definitely hidden in the depths of the Suiyu Cave. In addition, a large amount of chaos spiritual flames would be summoned every 30 years. With so many chaos spiritual flames, a large number of disciples gathered in the Suiyu Cave. It seems that the prehistoric inflammation is really hidden in the depths of the Suiyu Cave. The divine flame might that erupts every 30 years might be its masterpiece. This great desolate era supreme treasure possesses such terrifying strength. The chances of me capturing it are extremely slim. Su Fang pondered for a while and couldn't come up with a good idea for the time being. However, since there was an opportunity to collect large amounts of chaos spiritual flames, Su Fang naturally wouldn't miss it. Thus, he decided to stay in the Suiyu Cave. Su Fang followed the disciples of the Xianling ashram to the mountain range that they occupied. The so-called mountain range was actually the result of the prehistoric inflammation explosion. It was formed from magma that was melted by the terrifying power of fire. After cooling down, it was incomparably hot. The disciples of the Xianling ashram had to create a formation on top of it to barely stay. Because the natural forces and laws of the Chaos Ruins were different from the outside world, it was impossible to cultivate here. Even one's strength was suppressed. Su Fang occupied a mountain peak by himself. He created a formation and sat cross-legged in the middle of the formation. There was still more than 20 years until the Suiyu Cave's explosion. He could use this time to merge with the chaos spiritual flames in his hand and cultivate the fire cloud emperor physique. 3 figures arrived at the mountain range occupied by the disciples of the Xianling ashram and slowly flew towards Su Fang. They were the 3 geniuses of the Star Billow God realm who were sent by the 3 divine kings to protect Su Fang in the Chaos Ruins. Su Fang had no choice but to open a path for the 3 geniuses to enter the formation. Jing Zhuoran said coldly, "Mo Fenghua, Where's the rune I gave you? Why didn't you respond when I contacted you? Su Fong said indifferently, I was careless and ruined it. Destroyed? Mo Fenghua, you're really lucky to be able to survive in the chaos ruins for so long. The boorish-looking genius of the star below God realm mocked. My luck is pretty good. Su Fong chuckled. Jing Zhuan raised his eyebrows and said aggressively, from now on, you follow the three of us everywhere. If you lose your life, how are we going to explain it to the three divine kings? The boorish-looking genius of the star below God realm said domineeringly, let's just shackle him and save ourselves the trouble. We can also collect more chaos spiritual flames and sell them for high price. Who knows? We might even have a chance to catch prehistoric inflammation. Su Fong showed Mo Fenghua's hedonistic side. Shackle me. Mo Fenghua? Don't forget your duty in the chaos ruins. Be careful that I don't praise you in front of the three divine kings. The three of you won't be able to bear the consequences. The three geniuses of the star below God realm were furious, but when they thought of the three divine kings, they had no choice but to swallow their anger. The fact that the three divine kings had personally moved the three of them from the star below God realm to protect Mo Fenghua showed how important Mo Fenghua was to the three divine kings. If Mo Fenghua really did praise them in front of the three divine kings, no matter how talented the three of them were, they wouldn't be able to bear the wrath of the three divine kings. The three of them had a headache when faced with such a hedonistic person. In the end, Jing Zhuan gave Su Fong a rune talisman, and the three of them left the mountain. They stayed in a mountain range occupied by the disciples of Xianling Dao Right and didn't dare to stray too far from Su Fong. Su Fong separated a blood and water clone from his body and left it sitting cross-legged on the mountain. His true body entered the time and space cave. / There were only 2 rooms in the depths of the time and space cave. Su Fong's room was occupied by monster sage Greenfeather, so Su Fong had no choice but to share one with Luo. Primal Spirit Flame. Su Fong took out the Dao bottle. After removing the seal, a ball of fire rushed out of the bottle and condensed into a flame the size of a wash basin. Su Fong had collected a total of 13 spirit flames. They merged into one in the Dao bottle and became this. Su Fong released the power of yin and yang. The power of yin and yang and the pure yang fire in the yang vein enveloped the spirit flames and burned them. 10 days later, Su Fong's power completely merged with the spirit flames, causing the spirit flames to possess the power of yin and yang and pure yang. Only then did Su Fong absorb the spirit flames into the world in his body and enter the Tao palace of heaven and earth formed by the Yang vein and the world tree. Then Su Fong activated the 9 Yang, 9 transformations. His pure Yang energy, the power of the Yin-Yang world, and the divine energy in his divine abode crazily poured into the primal spirit flame through the 56 Yang veins. Chapter 1889. After fusing with the power of the great desolate spirit flame explosion. 8 reading books. Plus a portion of the energy poured into the god dwellings, causing Su Fong's god dwellings to undergo a drastic change. Su Fong's cultivation also underwent a transformation, rapidly climbing towards the peak of the 4th heaven of true God. However, Su Fong's main goal of fusing with the prehistoric inflammation was to cultivate the fire cloud, the archbody. Therefore, he sealed his body and didn't let his body absorb any energy. He focused all his energy on the Yang meridian. The method to transform the fire cloud emperor physique was very simple. It was to let the power of Yang, Yin, Yang, divine essence, physical body, and other powers fuse with the primordial spirit flame. Then, he would use the illusory fire cloud mantra to cultivate his physical body again, allowing the fire cloud emperor physique to transform to the height of the myriad worlds. First, he used the 9 Yang 9 transformations to fuse the spirit flame with the Yang meridian. The primeval spirit flame contained a shocking amount of fire elemental power and a trace of the world's essence, causing the pure Yang fire in the Yang vein to gradually transform once more. It was no longer the nine suns' immortal fire, but was constantly transforming into a divine fire. About a month later, chi, pure yang flames surged out of the yang meridian. It was not the nine yang celestial fire, but the higher-level nine yang divine fire. It was somewhat similar to the flames released by the Origin's sacred mirror, but it was still far from being comparable to the nine yang true fire. Su Fong controlled the nine suns' divine fire to burn in the depths of his body. He guided the flames to attack his corporeal body, fusing them with every corner of his corporeal body and meridians. His entire body was fiery red, and he exuded an astonishing divine might of flames. At this time, Su Fong's body was like a furnace. The power of the primitive desolate spirit flame fused with his life energy, pure yang energy, yin and yang world energy, and divine origin. His body was refined, and the impurities were incinerated layer by layer. Another 3 months passed. Luo, who had been paying attention to Su Fong, reminded him, "Your physical body and all of your energy have already fused with the primitive spirit flames. You can already cultivate the illusory fire cloud." Thus, Su Fong began to activate the illusory fire cloud technique. A burst of illusory fire cloud, divine aura, swept through his body. The flames hidden in his flesh turned into a burning cloud of fire in the form of a cloud and surged towards his hands. Su Fong's consciousness could see the changes in his body. He saw the fire clouds surging, giving him the feeling of a storm in his body, all of which flowed into his hands. Su Fong's hands felt like wood burning in flames. First, they were red, and then they emitted black smoke. They sizzled and burned for several days. With a boom, an astonishing flame power swept out. Su Fong's hands completely turned into a cloud of fire, which looked extremely frightening. When the burning fire cloud state slowly extended from his palms to his wrists, the energy of the primal spirit flame in his body was completely integrated. Su Fong also ended the cultivation of the fire cloud emperor physique. After checking his body both inside and out, Su Fong was overjoyed. The power of the primeval spirit flames had tempered Su Fong's perfect physical body to the point that not a single trace of impurities could be seen. It had become purer and stronger. At the same time, Su Fong's cultivation had also rapidly increased to the peak of the fourth firmament of true God. The yang meridian that had integrated a portion of the primeval spirit flame's power not only transformed the pure yang primordial fire, but also attacked the 57th yang meridian. The most important thing was still the fire cloud emperor physique. Although he had only cultivated his hands, it meant that the fire cloud emperor physique was transforming towards the god level. The illusory fire cloud divine aura contained the fire cloud steps, phaseless fire cloud saber, fire cloud wings, heaven burning eye, and other divine abilities. Naturally, the power of the illusory fire cloud divine aura had also increased. Moreover, there were many powerful techniques recorded in the illusory fire cloud. In the past, he couldn't cultivate them in the great world. Now, he could cultivate these powerful divine abilities. Su Fong's flame, divine aura, and the ability to control flames had also undergone a transformation. Putting everything else aside, he could completely refine divine artifacts now. I still need more primeval spirit flames. Su Fong ended his cultivation and walked out of the cavern of time. He merged with the Bloodwater clone and looked at the Sway Yu Cave's entrance with a burning gaze. He had only integrated a dozen or so primeval spirit flames. If he could obtain more, not only would his Fire Cloud Emperor physique, but his Yang Meridian and cultivation would also experience a great improvement. Young Master, hundreds of Xianling Dojo disciples flew over and stopped outside the formation on the mountain where Su Fong was. The leading disciple cupped his fists and said, "Young Master, please help us." Su Fong raised his eyebrows. "What's the matter?" The disciple hesitated for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, Mo Yuntian plans to team up with Xia Qijuan. After the next Sway Yu Cave explodes, they will work together to snatch the spirit flames and enter the Sui Yu cave to capture the prehistoric inflammation. Xia Qijuan is actually planning to capture the prehistoric inflammation. Su Feng wasn't surprised. Xia Qijuan and the other top-ranked special disciples were tasked to capture the prehistoric inflammation when they entered the Eldritch ruins, not to collect the spirit flames. However, how could a treasure like the prehistoric inflammation be so easy to capture? Su Feng thought for a moment and understood Xia Qijuan's intentions. Xia Qijuan's so-called alliance was obviously to use the Xianling dojo disciples as cannon fodder. Mo Yintian was currently the scapegoat for Dongshan Wei's murder and was in a hurry to find a backer. Naturally, he wanted to climb up the big tree that was Xia Qijuan. When the Eastern Mountain Dojo pursued the matter, with Xia Qijuan's support, he naturally wouldn't be afraid. With the strength of these disciples, entering the depths of the Sui Yu cave could be said to be near death. The Xianling dojo disciples weren't idiots and naturally understood Xia Qijuan's intentions. Who would be willing to be cannon fodder? However, they couldn't defy Mo Yuntian's orders. That was why they came to Su Feng with a glimmer of hope. In reality, they didn't have much hope for Su Feng. After all, with Mo Fenghua's reputation, why would he care about the life and death of others? Seeing that Su Feng didn't have any reaction, the leading disciple continued. Young master, if it was Xia Qijuan, we wouldn't have anything to say. However, Xia Qijuan also contacted the Sanskrit's young master, Fan Su. He clearly wants to use the lives of our Kuan Su divine sect disciples to curry favor with the Sanskrit. Fan Su, why should my Xianling dojo disciples be cannon fodder for Xia Qijuan and Fan Su? Let's go. I'll uphold justice for you. Su Feng's eyes flashed with cold, killing intent. He abruptly got up from the ground and passed through the formation. The Xianling dojo disciples were instantly overjoyed. However, when they thought of this young master's strength and his preposterous way of doing things, they were all extremely worried. Young Master Xia is Kuan Su Divine Sect's honorable disciple, the future leader of the Divine Sect. Who dares to disobey his orders? When we capture the prehistoric inflammation, all of you will have contributed greatly. You won't be lacking in rewards. The Xianling dojo disciples were gathered together. Mo Yuntian stood in the air, threatening and enticing the disciples. Behind Mo Yuntian were Xia Qijuan, Xia Yunji, Fan Su, and more than 30 Kuan Su Divine Sect special disciples and young experts from the Sanskrit. They emitted an invisible pressure that enveloped the disciples below, forming a huge deterrent. Mo Yuntian, when did you become the supreme leader of the Xianling dojo? How dare you give orders to our disciples? Su Feng slowly flew over and coldly shouted at Mo Yuntian. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Countless gazes gathered on Su Feng. Xia Qijuan, Fan Su, and the others all frowned. The Xianling dojo disciples were all stunned. They didn't expect this hedonistic young master to step forward at a time like this. Mo Yuntian coldly said, "This lord is the #1 disciple of the Xianling dojo. In front of this young master, your #1 disciple is nothing. With me here, what qualifications do you have to give orders to the Xianling dojo disciples and send them to their deaths? In order to avenge this young master, you killed Dongshan Wei. This young master is extremely grateful. I didn't expect you to be such a person. This young master is extremely disappointed in you." Su Feng completely revealed Mo Fenghua's arrogant and domineering side. Hua! The Xianling dojo disciples were in an uproar. They were all surprised and happy. The hedonistic and trash of the past had suddenly become incomparably respectable and amiable in their hearts. Mo Yuntian's divine light changed. He then said with conviction, "Xia Qijuan, young Master Xia, is a supreme disciple. Naturally, he can give orders to the Xianling dojo disciples." Su Feng snorted and domineeringly shouted, "Xia Qijuan's status as a supreme disciple has long since been stripped by the leader. Who does he think he is? Even if he's still a supreme disciple, for his own personal gain, he colluded with the Sanskrit and caused the divine sect disciples to die for nothing. This young master will absolutely not agree. Once the Chaos Ruins trial is over, this young master will personally report to the leader and give him a heavy punishment. Mo Yuntian was instantly speechless. The Xianling Dojo disciples below all let out a sigh of relief. At this moment, they felt that this hedonistic Mo Fenghua was even closer to them than their own family. Xia Qijuan's handsome face was ashen with anger. His entire body trembled. Clearly, he was extremely furious. Not long ago, in Xia Qijuan's eyes, Mo Fenghua was a pile of dog shit. Even stepping on him would make him feel disgusted. But now he was being publicly humiliated by such an idiot and trash. The fury in Xia Qijuan's heart could practically burn the heavens. However, in front of so many Xianling Dojo disciples, in addition to the fact that Su Fong had the backing of the three divine kings, and in addition, he was in the wrong this time. After being angrily rebuked by Su Fong, he had no words to refute. / How dare you be disrespectful to young Master Xia and even humiliate my clan? You're courting death. A Sanskrit genius let out a thunderous roar and suddenly leapt towards Su Fong. This person was around the age of 20, tall and robust, and he was like a bolt of lightning that galloped like a bolt of lightning. A strand of lightning flames whistled and circled around his body, causing it to erupt with waves of thunderclaps, and he instantly arrived less than 3 m before Su Fong with a speed that left no time for covering one's ears. Fan Chong, spare his life. Fan Su's cold voice came from behind. He spoke up not to save Su Fong, but because he had a blood oath with Su Fong. If he killed Su Fong now, it would only damage his reputation. As it turned out, the Sanskrit genius that attacked Su Fong was called Fan Chong. He cultivated the dual Tao of thunder and fire. His cultivation had reached the 6th firmament of the heavenly god realm, the same height as Fan Su. Chapter 1890. Lowly Ant, consider yourself lucky for young Master Su's benevolence. However, this young master will still break your bones inch by inch and refine them with lightning and fire. Fan Chong let out a ferocious laugh as he parted his palms. A thunderclap rumbled in the air as a stream of flame and lightning bolted towards Su Fong. Fan Chong's cultivation was much higher than Su Fong's, and he had mastered lightning and fire abilities. How could Su Fong resist his sudden attack? Young master, watch out! Xianling Training Hall's disciples shouted loudly. Xia Qijuan, Fan Su, and the others sneered disdainfully, waiting to see Su Fong's miserable appearance. Boom! Clang! Su Fong's right foot stomped out, and the power of the Earthshaker treasured boots burst out. In an instant, the power of the earth veins vibrated and formed a trembling, earthy yellow defense in front of him. Almost at the same time, a pair of wings sprung out from behind him. As they flapped, Su Fong's body shot backward faster than an arrow. Rumble! Fan Chong's lightning and fire power bombarded the defensive divine power released by the Earthshaker treasure boots. A majestic power shook violently and eroded Fan Chong's ability layer by layer. Part of the power of vibration swept out, and Fan Chong was also affected. Caught off guard, Fan Chong's sinister smile froze as the power of vibration slammed into his divine body. With Su Fong's current ability to control magic treasures and the Earthshaker treasured boots power to the extreme, Fan Chong, a 6th heaven celestial realm expert, suffered a great loss. His divine body was shattered layer by the power of vibration. His flesh was mangled and his bones were shattered. His divine body was knocked back several hundred meters. Su Fong did not have it easy either. Although the Earthshaker treasured boots' power of vibration dissipated more than half of Fan Chong's attack, a small part of it still penetrated the defense and affected Su Fong. His lightning and fire burned his abdomen. Fortunately, Su Fong's divine body was extremely strong. Only a layer of his flesh was burned by the lightning and fire. After his blood and qi surged, he immediately recovered. Mo Fenghua actually defended against the celestial realm expert's attack and even injured Fan Chong. Everyone was shocked. This was like a tiger aggressively pouncing on a rabbit, only to be scratched by the rabbit in the end. It gave people a strong impact. It was simply too inconceivable. This trash has become so extraordinary in just a few hundred years. Fan Su's eyes flashed. He felt a faint sense of threat. For the first time, he began to pay attention to Su Fang. Xia Qijuan, Xia Yunji, the Sanskrit disciples, and Kuan Su's special disciples were all in disbelief. Lowly ant, how dare you injure this young master? Fan Chong fell into a frenzy of rage. In front of so many people, he was actually injured by a true god realm man. It was simply too humiliating. Lightning and flames burst out from his body, as if a thunder god had descended. He once again pounced on Su Fang. This time, he had forgotten Fan Su's instructions and used all his strength to kill Su Fang. Fan Chong's speed was as fast as lightning, and his momentum was astonishing. In the blink of an eye, he had arrived in front of Su Fang. Suddenly, Su Fang smiled coldly. With a wave of his hand, a Xian Guang with a total of 300 runes appeared in front of him. Some of these runic symbols contained lightning magic and fire attribute berserk energy, while some were incomparably toxic. All of them were extremely powerful, and the numbers were also so many. Even peak ninth firmament celestial deity experts also had to avoid the sharpness. Fan Chong's scalp went numb. He hurriedly turned and fled. After fleeing more than 10 miles away, he breathed a sigh of relief. Only then did he realize that he was drenched in sweat from fear. Seeing this, not only Fan Chong, but everyone felt a chill run down their spines. Runes that could threaten a true God Realm expert. Every one of them was very valuable. Xianling Dojo's core disciples would at most have 2 or 3 of them. Even Xia Qijuan would not have more than 100. Su Fang actually took out 300 with a wave of his hand. It was simply outrageous. You're called Fan Chong, right? Didn't you want to do something to me? Why are you running away in fear? Su Fang was very proud and arrogant. Fan Chong was so angry that he gnashed his teeth. If you have the guts, put away the runes and fight me fair and square. If you have the guts, cripple your own cultivation and stretch your neck for me to chop off your head. Idiot. Su Fang mocked and ridiculed. So what if you're a Sanskrit genius? What I have is money. I can smash you all to death with money. Su Fang acted like he was rich and willful. He was incomparably arrogant, making the Sanskrit disciples furious. Attack together and kill this bastard. No matter how many runes he has, there will be a time when they're all used up. Fan Chong roared. Apart from Fan Su and a red-haired young genius, more than a dozen Sanskrit disciples activated their divine weapons and charged at Su Fang. Swish, swish, swish. Su Fang waved his hand and shot out several hundred runes. They floated in front of him, densely packed. Everyone's divine light changed in an instant. They were all overwhelmed with shock. The disciples of the Brahma race who were charging towards them all retreated at a speed several times faster than when they had come. If so many runes were detonated, it might cause the Chaos Ruins world to collapse. It was only now that everyone realized that Mo Fenghua was not only a wastrel, but also a madman, and a rich madman. Then, Su Fang shouted like thunder, Jing Zhuoran, can't you see that someone wants to kill me? Why aren't you coming to protect me? If you don't come out, I'll have to praise you in front of the 3 masters. Whoosh! The 3 geniuses from the Star Billow God realm flew over. Judging from their expressions, they were incomparably depressed. Fan Su, Mo Fenghua is under our protection. If you want to touch him, I advise you to give up. Jing Zhuoran looked at Fan Su and said coldly. Jing Zhuoran was quite famous in the Star Billow God realm. His strength had reached the 9th level of the heavenly God realm. Xia Qijuan and the Sanskrit disciples were incomparably afraid of him. They didn't expect that Su Fang would have 3 powerful experts by his side. It was almost impossible to kill him in the Chaos Ruins. Let's go. Fan Su's sharp gaze swept over Su Fang. Then he led the Sanskrit disciples away. Xia Qijuan, Xia Yunji, and Kuan Su could only leave with their tails between their legs. Young master is mighty. The disciples of Xianling Dao right cheered in unison. This time, Su Fang had become their savior and received their heartfelt support. As for Mo Fenghua's past misdeeds, They had all thrown them to the back of their minds. Mo Yintian didn't know whether to leave or stay. Under the strange gazes of the Xianling Dao, right disciples, his entire body felt uncomfortable. In the end, he coldly snorted, glanced coldly at Su Fong, then left with Xia Qijuan. Mo Fenghua, you better know your place. If you continue to cause trouble, we can protect you for now, but not forever. Jing Zhuan and the other two geniuses of the Star Billow God Realm were being ordered around by Su Fong like a hired thug. They were infuriated, so naturally, they wouldn't be nice to Su Fong. Su Fong returned to the mountain, cultivating while waiting for the next explosion of the Sui Yu Cave. The Kuan Su Divine sect disciples guarding the Sui Yu Cave gradually couldn't hold themselves back and began to leave the cave to search for spirit items and treasures in the Chaos Ruins. Countless conflicts occurred during this period, mainly because of the Chaos Spirit Flame. It was related to the Godchild Tournament's quota. The special disciples didn't care about their status and wantonly plundered the core disciples. Previously, many lucky disciples had collected the Chaos Spirit Flame, but luck didn't represent strength. Even if they obtained a great treasure, it was difficult for them to keep it. In the end, most of the Chaos Spirit Flame fell into the hands of the special disciples, as well as the geniuses of the Sanskrit and other forces. Young Master, a disciple came to Su Fong's mountain. This core disciple of the Xianling Dao, right, had an ordinary appearance, but he looked very shrewd. Su Fong was very unhappy that his cultivation was interrupted. He asked coldly, "What is it now?" The disciple hurriedly said, "Young Master, it's good news. This lowly one has received news about the Chaos Dao fruit. In order to repay the young Master's kindness, this lowly one has come to inform you." Chaos Dao fruit. Su Fong was stunned, then his eyes lit up. The so-called Chaos Dao fruit was a kind of spirit item born from the essence of the Chaos world. The Chaos Dao fruit contained the heavenly Dao aura from the beginning of the heavenly Dao. After devouring it, deities could refine the heavenly Dao aura and fuse it with their godhead, increasing the quality of their godhead. Although the great desolate Dao fruit didn't have an obvious effect on the quality of the divine spark, even if there was a slight change in the divine spark, it also meant an increase in cultivation talent. Deities naturally scrambled for the great desolate Dao fruit like a flock of ducks, crazily fighting over it. Furthermore, the Chaos Dao fruit had another function. After devouring the Chaos Dao fruit, the mortals of the heavenly Dao could strengthen themselves with the heavenly Dao aura. In the future, they only needed to constantly consume pills and accumulate energy to rapidly increase their cultivation. After fusing with their godhead and surviving the Chaos Divinity Tribulation, they could become deities. In addition, the Chaos Dao fruit was a spirit item unique to the Chaos Ruins. After countless years of harvesting, it had become very rare. Therefore, the value of the Chaos Dao fruit was high, comparable to a supreme-grade divine artifact. The news that someone had found the Chaos Dao fruit was truly shocking. Su Fong thought of Monster Sage Green Feather, Huang Lingyao, Zhu Yin, Yu Miaomei, and the others in his inner world. If they cultivated step by step, he didn't know how long it would take for them to become deities. Monster Sage Green Feather's advancement was much faster, but Huang Lingyao, Zhu Yin, Yu Miaomei, and the others would definitely take a very long time. / not to mention the others. Su Fong felt uncomfortable keeping Huang Lingyao by his side. He couldn't wait for her to become a deity immediately. Then, he could let her go and let her fend for herself. How precious is the Chaos Dao fruit? Even if someone found it, how could they leak the news and let you find out about it? Su Fong's gaze seemed to be able to see through the disciple's heart. Because the Chaos Dao fruit is guarded by a powerful big goblin, it's impossible for ordinary disciples to obtain the Dao fruit. Therefore, I sold the news to young Master Jiang Baojian of the Tong Bao Chamber of Commerce. Young Master Jiang offered a sky-high reward and invited experts to kill the big goblin and obtain the Chaos Dao fruit. Young Master's strength is extraordinary. You even defeated Sanskrit's Fan Chong. Therefore, I specially came to inform young master so that you won't miss a good opportunity. Seeing Su Fang's doubts, the disciple explained calmly. I understand. You're considerate. Go. Chapter 1891. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The Tao runes of the heavens' secret life, shrinking technique flickered in the depths of Su Fang's mind. Someone was sensing Su Fang's aura. Mo Yun Tian, you can't wait to attack me? Su Fang sat on the mountaintop, without moving. He raised the corner of his mouth slightly, revealing a mocking smile. The Tao runes in his mind formed an image of Mo Yun Tian. Actually, when that Xianling Dao right disciple came to report the news of the prehistoric Dao fruit to Su Fang determined that someone wanted to lure him out. He also determined that it could be no one but Mo Yun Tian. Su Fang was no rookie. He had gone from minor world to a myriad of worlds. He had experienced countless trials and tribulations and seen countless schemes. If he couldn't even see through such a small trick, he wouldn't deserve to be called a peerless overlord of a major world. Mo Yun Tian, there must be Xia Qijuan and Fan Su. Since you wanted to go out, I'll fulfill your wish. I'm just afraid that your teeth aren't sharp enough to kill me. Instead, I'll break your teeth. Su Fang smiled coldly and continued to sit on the mountaintop. 10 days later, Su Fang sensed that the three-star Billow God Realm geniuses had left the mountain range occupied by Xianling Dao right disciples. They were clearly also heading for the prehistoric Dao fruit. Thus, Su Fang rode on his flying sword and slowly flew towards the place where Jiang Baojun, the young master of Tong Bao Chamber of Commerce, was recruiting experts. The ground was in a mess. Everywhere, there were traces of destruction caused by the terrifying power of the primitive earth flame. After flying for more than 1,000 miles, Su Fang's heaven's secret life shrinking technique sensed that someone was tailing him from behind. With the help of the heaven's secret life shrinking technique and his perfect sensory ability, Su Fang sensed a total of 4 people. Aside from Mo Yun Tian, there was also a Sanskrit genius and 2 special disciples by Xia Qijuan's side. These 4 people's cultivations were about the same, all at the height of 4th firmament celestial deity. Furthermore, among these 4 people, 3 of them were Kuan Su divine sex special disciples. The other one was a Sanskrit genius. They definitely all had powerful means and were definitely not ordinary 4th firmament celestial deities. In order to kill me, they actually sent out 4 powerful experts. They really think highly of me. Su Fang flew forward unhurriedly, his heart filled with a strong killing intent. Half a day later, the 4 people at the back obviously sped up. Su Fang knew that they were planning to attack, so he suddenly pushed the silver streaking sword to the extreme, turning into a stream of light that streaked across the sky. Then, he flew to the ground and arrived at a valley. When the prehistoric inflammation was born, it caused the earth to erupt, causing lava to flow everywhere in the chaos ruins. In this valley, a large amount of magma had not yet cooled down completely, emitting scorching heat and thick smoke. Su Fang controlled his flying sword and entered a cave in the valley. Then, he quickly changed into a black Taoist robe and a cloak. The aura he released contained poison. With a shake of his body, he transformed into a deity that cultivated the poison Tao. After changing his appearance, Su Fang set up rune talismans everywhere in the cave. Only then did he sit down cross-legged. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Mo Yun Tian and the rest chased Su Fang into the valley. After searching, they quickly found the cave that Su Fang was in. Su Fang's current aura was completely different from Mo Feng was. Mo Yun Tian and the rest could not see any clues. Have you seen this person before? Mo Feng Hua shot out a Xian Guang, condensing it into a lifelike image of Su Fang. Never. Su Fang sat cross-legged on the spot and replied indifferently. The Sanskrit genius said coldly, that trash must be in this valley. He can't have run far. Continue searching. Mo Yun Tian glanced at Su Fang and transmitted his primordial spirit to the Sanskrit genius. Mo Feng Hua has the 3 divine kings as her backing. We must not leak any information. Since this person has seen us, he deserves to be unlucky. Kill him to silence him. You are quite careful. That's right. The Sanskrit genius nodded. Then he glanced at Su Fong and suddenly frowned. It's him? Mo Yun Tian said. Young Master Fan knows this person? The Sanskrit genius said with a smile. This person is quite daring. He actually snatched the spirit flame of the Wind Divine Realm's genius and even heavily injured him. Young Master Yi Yongkong returned to the Wind Divine Realm to search for this person in the wilderness ruins. I didn't expect to meet him here. Just kill him and let young Master Yi Yongkong owe Sanskrit a favor. The Sanskrit genius revealed a sinister smile and walked towards Su Fong. Mo Yun Tian and the other two Kuan Su Divine Sect special disciples didn't have any intention of making a move. In their opinion, killing a true God Realm deity didn't require them to make a move. Suddenly, boom, there was a huge explosion at the entrance of the cave. The ground shook and rocks collapsed, sealing the entrance of the cave. A special disciple who was closer to the entrance of the cave fell to the ground. The impact of the explosion swept up rocks and shattered his back. He was immediately heavily injured. It turned out that Su Fong had secretly activated a powerful rune talisman that he had hidden at the entrance of the cave in advance. The sudden, unforeseen event attracted everyone's attention. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, Su Fong leaped up from the ground like an agile cheetah. Traces of flames were left under his feet as he instantly arrived in front of the Sanskrit genius. Courting death. As expected of a genius from Sanskrit, his reaction was extremely quick. He opened his mouth and spat out a sword light, shattering Su Fong's figure. The Sanskrit genius was startled. The flying sword had actually shattered Su Fong's afterimage. It turned out that Su Fong had used the Tao of Time. The Su Fong that the Sanskrit genius saw was merely an image that Su Fong had left behind. Su Fong used this split second to flash to the right side of the Sanskrit genius. His right palm transformed into a fire cloud and ruthlessly smashed down on the head of the Sanskrit genius. Boom! A necklace on the neck of the Sanskrit genius suddenly exploded with a silver xianguang. It released a protective divine aura that protected his head. This necklace was actually a defensive divine artifact. Although it was only of low quality, it could release a protective divine aura at a critical moment. Even if it was just a split second, it could still allow the Sanskrit genius to retreat. Who knew? With a sizzling sound, the xianguang was quickly melted by Su Fong's fire cloud. Su Fong's palm was almost unobstructed. It landed on the head of the Sanskrit genius. The Nine Suns' divine flame's flame aura seeped into the genius' head and ignited it with a boom. The Sanskrit genius only had time to let out a miserable scream before his head was burned to ashes. Su Fong's pure yang true fire had evolved from the Nine Suns' immortal flame to the divine flame level. Its power was terrifying. From Su Fong's sudden attack to the death of the Sanskrit genius, less than a breath's time had passed. The Sanskrit genius's miserable scream before his death woke Mo Yun Tian and the other special disciple. The other special disciple, who had been injured by the shock wave, stood up shakily. Phaseless fire cloud saber. Su Fong instantly formed a seal. Countless burning saber lights converged into a wave of fire that swept out. Su Fong's target wasn't Mo Fenghua, but the other two special disciples. Puff, puff, puff. The fire divine ability exploded like a volcano. The special disciple, who had been injured by the rune talisman, was burned by the flames and quickly died under the burning saber lights. Chi! A jade archive shot out from the body of this special disciple and disappeared into nothingness. The other special disciple released sword chi to block the burning saber lights. As expected of a special disciple, Su Fong's phaseless fire cloud saber couldn't kill him instantly. You are courting death. Mo Yun Tian was shocked and furious that two of them had been unexpectedly killed by a true God Realm deity. He roared furiously and formed a shocking seal. This cave was originally scorching hot, but after Mo Yun Tian's seal was formed, it instantly became cold and gloomy. It was as if they had arrived at a glacial snowfield. At the same time, a 3-meter-tall cold mountain phantom that was lingering with cold air quickly condensed. It brought along a terrifying, suppressive, and freezing aura as it pressed down on Su Fang. Mo Fenghua was able to become the #1 disciple of Xianling Dao sect and was one step away from becoming the young master of Xianling Dao sect. She was definitely not an ordinary special disciple. She cultivated the great Tao of ice and earth, and even grasped such a shocking divine ability. Heaven and earth power, be mine to use. Su Fang felt as if his entire body was sealed by ice. The shocking suppressive force was about to smash him into meat paste. With a loud roar, he immediately activated his world power. This world power was released and quickly turned into an aura that could control divine might and fuse with heaven and earth. At the same time, Su Fang formed another seal. The surrounding gravity field immediately became chaotic. A repulsive force sent the cold mountain phantom that Mo Yuntian released flying. Another shocking gravity broke the leg bones of the special disciple who had just resolved the phaseless fire cloud saber's attack. He directly fell to the ground and vomited blood. His internal organs were severely injured. Chaotic Kuan formless seal. Who exactly are you? How can you grasp Xianling Sovereign's chaotic Kuan formless seal? Mo Yuntian was very shocked. He looked at Su Fang in disbelief. I'll let you see who I am. Su Fang took off his cloak, revealing Mo Fenghua's face. Mo Fenghua, you're actually that trash Mo Fenghua. Mo Yuntian was dumbfounded. How is this possible? How could Mo Fenghua have the shocking strength to kill a heaven god expert? / equals what's impossible? You, Mo Yuntian, in order to obtain the position of young master of Xianling Dao sect, you repeatedly plotted against me. You didn't think that you would die in my hands one day, did you? Su Fang smiled coldly. His killing intent suddenly became incomparably dense. Good. What a good Mo Fenghua. I didn't expect you to hide so deeply. You made everyone mistakenly think that you're a trash, but in reality, you're a powerhouse who transcends realms, a peerless genius. But so what? I'll suppress you and throw you into the big goblin's nest. This way, who could find out that I killed you? As long as you die, I'll be Xianling Dao sect's young master. Moreover, one day, I'll replace Xianling Dao sect's sovereign and even become the master of small world. Chapter 1892. This divine artifact is something I obtained a long time ago. It's called Heaven's Sealing Frost. Although I can only use a small portion of its power, it's enough to kill you. Being able to die under my supreme divine weapon is also a kind of glory for you. Ha ha, ha ha ha, ha ha ha, ha ha ha, ha ha ha. Mo Yuntian laughed sinisterly. He leaped and punched at Su Fang. Chi. The temperature in the cave plummeted. A thick layer of frost quickly formed on the ground and the walls of the cave. It was as if the world was frozen. Mo Yuntian's right fist also had a terrifying aura that could crush everything. It was domineering and cold. A supreme grade divine artifact is worthy of being called a supreme divine artifact. I was just about to test the might of gigantified diamond body, Herculean divine palm, and indestructible golden body. You could be my test subject. Su Fang inexplicably snorted. After forming a seal, he released the surging power of the world of yin and yang. Then, his body flickered with a large amount of dazzling golden electricity, shattering the frost and shackling his divine body layer by layer. Pa! Su Fang's muscles and bones crazily expanded, turning him into a 30-foot tall giant. His head reached the ceiling of the cave before it stopped growing. A golden robe appeared on Su Fang's body. It was covered with golden heavenly marks and emitted a strong, pure yang aura. After Su Fang used gigantified diamond body, he obviously didn't reach this height. It was just that he was affected by the cave and couldn't use his full strength. However, the power of gigantified diamond body wasn't affected much. What evil technique is this? Mo Fenghua, No wonder your strength has skyrocketed to such a height. So you cultivated an evil technique. Oomph. Evil techniques aren't worth mentioning in front of my supreme divine artifact. Mo Yuntian rushed out and used heaven's sealing frost. His fist seemed to condense all the power in the surroundings. Mo Fenghua Dai. Pa! Boom! The two fought in the cave. The strength they displayed was definitely not that of an ordinary fourth firmament celestial god. It even surpassed sixth firmament celestial god. The cave shook violently and shattered layer by layer. After a series of explosions, Pa! Mo Yuntian was sent flying. Blood seeped out of his 7 orifices. His Taoist robe was torn to shreds, and his divine body was riddled with cracks. Looking at Su Fong again, he still looked calm. Only his aura had become a little sluggish, and many of the golden seals on his Taoist robe had been shattered. At this moment, Du was like the legendary god of war, majestic and invincible. Mo Yuntian, even a divine weapon can't save you. Su Fong's lips curled into a mocking smile. Titan palm. Clang. Su Fong's arms opened and closed like a big bow. His palms shot out high up in the air. A golden palm print, which was nearly 3 meters in size, covered Mo Yuntian's body like a real golden hand. Mo Yuntian was sent flying, forcefully creating a large hole in the cave. The cave collapsed with a loud bang. Su Fong reached his hand out and grabbed that injured special disciple. Clenching forcefully, he crushed all the bones in his body. At the same time, a wisp of yin-yang world power shattered his divine abode, which was absorbed into Su Fong's inner world. The corpses of that Sanskrit genius and special disciple, Su Fong did not let them go either, absorbing them into his body together. These two people were both fourth firmament celestial deity experts. Their divine bodies were powerful, containing astonishing life energy. They were cultivation materials that were hard to come by. Su Fong naturally would not waste them for nothing. Then, the Su Fong who transformed into a giant walked out of the cave that was collapsing nonstop. Mo Yuntian was already seriously injured at this time, falling into a spot of magma that had yet to completely cool down. He was burned by the magma until his flesh was lacerated, but it was hard for him to struggle. Su Fong recovered to his normal state, looking like he was panting for breath. The consumption of deploying the great giant transformation Vajra body was still too great. But compared to before, there was already a heaven and earth difference. Mo Fenghua. No, young lord, I'm willing to acknowledge you as my master and become a slave expert under your command, serving you for life. Mo Yuntian was also an ambitious and ruthless person who knew when to yield and when to stand tall. He actually took the initiative to beg for mercy. Su Fong was rather tempted, but the resentment within Mo Fenghua's consciousness made him give up on the idea. Apologies in order to fulfill my Dao heart. I have no choice but to kill you. Su Fong smiled indifferently. Mo Fenghua, if you dare to kill me, the Xianling holy man and the upper echelons of the divine sect will definitely not let you off. Mo Yuntian saw that Su Fong's killing intent did not change and immediately roared in despair. Su Fong shook his head. You've probably forgotten that I have the 3 divine kings backing me up. Even Master Cohen, Su has no choice but to curry favor with me. How can I be punished for killing a special disciple? Besides, I won't personally kill you. Then, Su Fong released the undead monarch. Resurrected expert? Such a weak resurrected expert, and the aura on his body is not that of a god resurrected from the heavens, but an immortal from a greater world. Mo Fenghua, you're actually controlling a resurrected immortal. This is a great taboo in the divine realm. If the divine sect finds out, even the 3 divine kings won't be able to protect you. Mo Yuntian was first shocked and stunned. Then he roared in anger. You'd better worry about your own life first. Su Fong chuckled, then sealed Mo Yuntian and swept him out of the magma. Then, he unceremoniously took Mo Yuntian's divine weapon, frost sealing heaven and earth, and his storage ring for himself. Seeing his own treasures fall into the hands of the enemy, Mo Yuntian's heart continuously dripped with blood. Su Fong then released the heavily injured special disciple from his body. Undead monarch, I'll leave them all to you. So, Su Fong planned to let the undead monarch use these two gods to perform a sacrificial ritual to ascend to the divine realm. Thank you, Master. The undead monarch was both surprised and happy. He excitedly carried the two and found a flat area to create a blood-colored altar. Sacrificial ritual. Mo Fenghua, you actually dared to use such an evil method on me. You're simply insane. Mo Fenghua, kill me. I don't want to be sacrificed to the evil god. Mo Yuntian's usual elegance and calmness had completely disappeared. His face was filled with fear and despair. The special disciple directly fainted from fright. After the undead monarch formed a seal, the blood-colored altar suddenly surged with a blood-colored light, releasing streaks of intertwining blood scars that surrounded Mo Yuntian and the special disciple. Then, the altar trembled and the blood-colored light exploded, quickly seeping into the two's divine bodies. Mo Yuntian waited in fear and despair for nearly an hour. A bloody light soared into the sky from his and that special disciple's bodies. At the same time, it took away their consciousness, life, and everything else. In the blink of an eye, their bodies rapidly withered and shriveled. In the end, layer by layer, they collapsed and turned into ashes. At the same time, when Mo Yuntian died, Su Fong felt that the resentment in Mo Fenghua's consciousness had become much fainter. However, it wasn't completely eliminated. There was still Xia Yunji and Fan Su. Mo Fenghua died with remaining grievances. The blood-colored light soared into the sky, breaking through the world barrier of the chaos ruins and disappeared without a trace. After a while, a blood-colored light that emitted an evil and mysterious aura, like the aura of the heavenly Tao, descended from the sky and fell into the undead monarch's body. After settling for a while, an incomparably vast aura of death burst out from the undead monarch's body. It was at least the terrifying aura of a sixth firmament true god. It swept out in all directions, turning into a death domain with an area of 1,000 feet. Sacrificing two fourth firmament true gods actually allowed the undead monarch to not only advance to the divine realm, but also to the height of a sixth firmament true god. He didn't need to cultivate, didn't need to fuse with the Godhead, and didn't have any bottlenecks or divine tribulation. Such a terrifying speed of advancement is simply shocking. Calamities born in small and large worlds will erupt in the myriad worlds sooner or later. Su Fong was very shocked. At the same time, his heart was also filled with a sense of urgency. Many thanks, Master. I didn't expect that I, the undead monarch, would actually also become a true god one day. The undead monarch came in front of Su Fong, looking wild with joy. Different from other resurrected experts, the undead monarch had self-awareness. He looked similar to ordinary evil path cultivators. Looking at the undead monarch, Su Fong also felt very emotional. The undead monarch was a good friend of the Yellow Spring Great Emperor back then. The Yellow Spring Great Emperor had already died many years ago, but the undead monarch became an expert under his successor and even advanced to become a true god. Fate was truly unpredictable. The commotion caused by the undead monarch's sacrifice was not small. Su Fong did not dare to stay here for long. He put the undead monarch back into his inner world, then changed his appearance and drove the silver-streaked sword away at lightning speed. On the way, Su Fong counted his gains this time and was very happy in his heart. This time, not only did he successfully get rid of Mo Yuntian, this old enemy, it could be considered to have fulfilled one of Mo Fenghua's wishes. He also killed a Sanskrit genius and two special disciples. The undead monarch had successfully advanced to become a true god. Moreover, he had advanced to the sixth firmament of true god. The sunflower water mermaid was severely injured by Su Fong with the Origin Sacred Mirror and would not be of much use in a short period of time. She was recuperating in the Xianwang Six Paths Pagoda. Now that Su Fong had a powerful expert like the undead monarch as his subordinate, he would not be without someone to use when facing a strong enemy. The life energy in the Sanskrit genius and the special disciples' corpses, as well as the blood energy of the strange fish in Xianshui Lake, were all refined into blood crystals by Su Fong with the power of the yin-yang world. They were stored like pills. The storage rings of the other four people contained many divine artifacts, pills, spiritual items, and other resources. Su Fong estimated that they were worth about 200,000 divine jades. This meant that Su Fong could bid farewell to being poor. 9 true, 9 sons at the same time, killing 4 heavenly gods this time also proved Su Fong's strength. At least in the myriad worlds, he was no longer a weakling who could be bullied by others. He now had the power to protect himself. After flying for half a month, a towering mountain appeared in Su Fong's sight. In the sky above the mountain, there was a huge recruit character formed by a magical ability. This was the place where the young master of the Tong Bao Chamber of Commerce, Jiang Baozhen, recruited experts. Su Fong flew across the sky and arrived at the peak of the mountain. He saw Jiang Baozhen lazily sitting in a pavilion created by a magical ability. There were 2 heavenly beauties serving him. Chapter 1893. In the pavilion, apart from Jiang Baozhen and Fan Chong, there were also a few acquaintances of Su Fong. 3 geniuses from the star Billow Divine World. Their identities were very extraordinary, sitting on the same level as Jiang Baozhen. Thousands of deities who wanted to join the Tong Bao Chamber of Commerce's treasure hunting team formed a long line on the mountain peak. The 3 young deities of the Tong Bao Chamber of Commerce examined them one by one. It was also unknown how powerful the big goblin guarding the Chaos Dao fruit was. The big goblin that the Tong Bao Chamber of Commerce recruited was either a 6th firmament celestial deity expert or had some powerful means, leaving many disciples who came to train in disappointment. Finally, it was Su Fong's turn. A 4th firmament true god realm weakling also wants to join my Tong Bao Chamber of Commerce's treasure hunting team. How did you sneak into the Chaos Ruins? After a deity of the Tong Bao Chamber of Commerce sensed Su Fong's aura, he was immediately shocked and stunned, then immediately mocked and ridiculed. The people by the side also followed with a roar of laughter. This time, there were many special disciples who brought true God Realm disciples into the Chaos Ruins through divine artifacts. On one hand, it was to let them train, and, on the other hand, they could also be helpers. Even if Kuan Su's divine sect knew, they would not interfere. However, this portion of disciples were all 7th firmament true God Realm and above. Otherwise, if their strength was too low, it was equivalent to bringing them into the Chaos Ruins to die. Su Fong's peak 4th firmament true God strength could be said to be one of a kind. It was also no wonder that everyone would have such a reaction. In the pavilion, Fan Chong sneered and said, "This ant thinks that young Master Jiang is recruiting coolies." Jing Zhuoran chuckled. A 4th firmament true god also dares to enter the Chaos Ruins. This person's guts are not small, comparable to that clown young master of Xianling Bodhidharma. Jiang Baozhen waved his hand and said, "Why haven't you chased him away yet?" The Tong Bao Chamber of Commerce's people immediately wanted to chase Su Fong away when a young deity in a green robe in the pavilion suddenly called out, "Hold on." The green-robed deity's aura was void, giving people an unfathomable feeling. His cultivation reached the height of 7th firmament celestial deity. He took a step out of the pavilion. His figure floated like a gust of wind and appeared in front of Su Fong. "Take off your cloak and let me see your face." The god in green robe shouted coldly. Su Fong said indifferently, "Who are you? What qualifications do you have to make me take off my cloak?" "I'm Yi Yang from the Return to Wind Divine Realm. I'm a genius from the Return to Wind Divine Realm, but I was severely injured by a deity who was dressed like you and had his spirit flame stolen. I suspect that you're that deity. You cowardly scoundrel, show your true face." The celestial being in green robe shouted in a domineering manner. A fleeting chi aura stirred up a strong wind that swept toward Su Fong. Su Fong staggered. The cloak on his head was blown off by the strong wind, revealing a sickly, sallow face. "Ant, hand over the spirit flame, and let me shackle you obediently. Otherwise, you won't be able to escape death." Yi Yang sneered disdainfully. With a flash of his body, he rushed towards Su Fong like a gust of wind. Whoosh! Su Fong used the fire cloud steps and stepped on fire. His movement technique was extremely nimble as he quickly distanced himself from Yi Yang. "Ant, you do have some tricks up your sleeves. No wonder you can injure a genius from the return to Wind Divine Realm." A green Xian Guang flashed from Yi Yang's body and spun around him like a whirlwind. His body suddenly became ethereal like a leaf dancing in the wind. Not only was he swift, but it was also difficult for others to catch his trajectory. He emitted an elegant aura of the great Tao. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Su Fong still used the fire cloud steps. However, there was a mysterious power of time lingering around his body, causing the time that everyone saw him to differ from when he actually existed. Although Yi Yang's movement technique was strange, it was still difficult for him to catch sight of Su Fong's figure. Such a scene made everyone feel incredulous. There was no longer any mockery or contempt in their eyes when they looked at Su Fong. After all, the cultivators from the Return to Wine Divine Realm were most proficient in the great Tao of Wind. Yi Yang was an expert among the geniuses from the Return to Wine Divine Realm who entered the Eldritch Ruins this time. He was second only to the Return to Wine Divine Realm's young master, Yi Yang. At this moment, Yi Yang's movement technique was actually unable to catch sight of a fourth heaven true God Realm immortal. It was simply unbelievable. This unknown black-robed immortal was obviously hiding his strength. He suddenly became somewhat unfathomable in everyone's eyes. "Go to hell." Yi Yang seemed to be a little anxious. He separated his hands and formed a seal. Who knew that right at this time, Su Fong suddenly used fire cloud wings. Bang! Bang! As the fire cloud wings flapped, the power of time suddenly exploded. His body suddenly sped up and circled to Yi Yang's side in a flash. Then he used the fire cloud steps and raised his hand to form a dozen poisonous runes. A large amount of poisonous gas flowed out and surged towards Yi Yang like a tide. Yi Yang's divine light changed instantly. He did not have time to use his ability and hurriedly dodged, but his right arm was still swept by the poisonous gas. Whoosh! Whoosh! Under the corrosion of the strong poison, Yi Yang's skin quickly festered into black liquid. No matter how he urged his divine energy, he could not force the strong poison out. After swallowing a dozen different antidote pills, the strong poison in Yi Yang's arm was not dispelled. Instead, it spread to his shoulder. Yi Yang was shocked. His left hand exploded with a sharp green sword aura and slashed at his right arm. His entire arm was cut off from the shoulder. Only then did he successfully resolve the fatal danger. Sizzle! Blood spurted out from Yi Yang's severed arm and quickly condensed into flesh and blood. After a dozen breaths, it turned into a brand new right arm. However, Yi Yang's breath had become much weaker. He immediately swallowed the pills to recover. "Brat, you're dead." Yi Yang looked at Su Fong with incomparable resentment. "If you want to fight again, I'll keep you company." Su Fong smiled coldly and took out hundreds of runes. All of them were poisonous runes. Everyone felt a chill down their spines and subconsciously retreated. This strong poison was so terrifying that even Yi Yang suffered a great loss. How could they not be afraid? At this moment, Su Fong's danger level in everyone's hearts rose to an extremely shocking level. Yi Yang's expression changed greatly. He glared at Su Fong hatefully and did not say anything else. Su Fong said loudly to Jiang Baozhen in the pavilion, "Young Master Jiang, am I qualified to join your treasure hunting team?" Jiang Baozhen stood up and laughed. "I didn't expect that there would be such an expert hidden in Kuan Su's divine sex training in the elemental ruins. You have the Tao of Time, and the mastery of such strong poison. Of course, I'm qualified to include you." This young master of Tong Bao Chamber of Commerce looked like a spoiled brat, but his eyes were extremely sharp. He saw through the power that Su Fong had just used. The Tao of Time, Jing Zhuan, Fan Chong, and the other expert's divine light changed instantly. The Tao of Time was a supreme heavenly Tao. In the myriad of worlds, even the great realm lords might not be able to master such a peerless technique. Only a few powerful realm lords could master it. Even more shocking was that Su Fong had mastered the Tao of Time, the Tao of Fire, and the Tao of Poison at the same time. Such talent was simply shocking. Su Fong suddenly became unfathomable in the eyes of many experts. Even Fan Chong, a genius from Sanskrit, looked at Su Fong with a trace of respect. Just like that, Su Fong joined Tong Bao Chamber of Commerce's treasure hunting team. 10 days later, Jiang Baozhen had recruited a total of more than 100 experts, all of whom were true experts. Jiang Baozhen took out a treasure ship and carried the team of more than 100 people straight into the depths of the primitive ruins. The treasure ship flew at an extremely fast speed, comparable to the speed of a mid-grade flying sword. Moreover, it was very stable and comfortable. Due to the strength Su Fong had displayed and his unfathomable identity, he received a courteous reception from Tong Bao Chamber of Commerce. Like Jing Zhuoran, Fan Chong, and the others, he was given a room. Most of the others stayed at the bow of the ship. During this time, Jiang Baozhen and other experts from other factions, as well as powerful special disciples from Kuan Su's divine sect, came to befriend Su Fong and at the same time probe Su Fong's background. Su Fong followed Luo's teachings and talked nonsense with these people, displaying his shocking knowledge and shocking Jiang Baozhen and the others. The more they determined that Su Fong's identity was extraordinary, the more respect they had for Su Fong. Even Yang, who had returned to the Wind God realm, came to apologize to Su Fong and even gave him a large sum of divine jade treasures. This was the myriad worlds. Only by possessing great strength and at the same time possessing an extraordinary identity could one win the respect of others. The treasure ship flew for about 3 months before finally arriving above a huge abyss. This abyss was called the Abyss of Heavenly Mansion because the natural spiritual energy here was incomparably abundant. It was rich in precious and rare spiritual items. However, the natural spiritual energy here was the kind of primitive aura where the 5 elements were indistinguishable and the laws of the great Tao were indistinct. Not only was it unsuitable for the current gods to cultivate, their cultivation was also suppressed in the abyss. Moreover, there were many powerful primitive beasts living in the abyss of Heavenly Mansion. Therefore, very few people dared to enter the abyss to search for treasures. Everyone, this young master won't talk about the dangers of the abyss of Heavenly Mansion. However, we have so many experts here, so there's nothing to fear. It's just that the revived demon god guarding the primitive Tao tree is very difficult to deal with. As long as we work together to kill this revived demon god, the primitive Tao fruit will naturally be at our fingertips. According to the information this young master bought, there are close to 20 primitive Tao fruits on the primitive Tao tree. Moreover, they're all Tao fruits that are about to mature. The value of one Tao fruit is equivalent to a supreme gray Tao artifact. Jiang Baozhen's words made everyone's eyes become bright. To celestial deity realm gods, not only could a supreme gray Tao artifact increase their strength or be used to protect their lives, it could also be used to comprehend great Tao laws from the Tao artifact and increase their cultivation. For a supreme gray Tao artifact, even if they lost their lives, it was worth it. After the matter is done, the Tong Bao Chamber of Commerce will take half of the Tao fruits. The remaining Tao fruits will be distributed according to merit. As for those who didn't get a Tao fruit, this young master won't treat you unfairly. Each person will have 50,000 Tong Bao Divine Jade. No one had any objections to the distribution method that Jiang Baozhen proposed. Actually, everyone was well aware that the so-called distribution according to merit was actually based on strength. Whoever's fist was bigger would naturally obtain more Tao fruits. Those with small fists could only drink soup. Let's go. Chapter 1894. Su Fong followed the treasure hunting team and flew towards the depths of the heavenly sect abyss. Along the way, the team encountered countless big goblin attacks. Among them, there were also many resurrected big goblins and deities. Fortunately, Tong Bao Chamber of Commerce recruited experts, and there were many of them. After a series of battles, they successfully reached the depths of the heavenly sect abyss. Along the way, Su Fong also attacked a few times, but they were all attacks with toxic rune talismans. He did not display his true strength, but he casually collected many alchemy materials. At the bottom of the heavenly sect abyss, the heaven and earth spiritual energy here was so dense that it made people feel a kind of sticky feeling. However, not only could this spiritual energy not be absorbed, it also brought about astonishing shackles on deities. Their strength was suppressed to only the original 60%. Some below 6 firmament celestial deity found it difficult to fly here. However, the world power here was similarly incomparably pure. Su Fong cultivated the world tree. In addition to the transformation of the purple cloud lost spirit, his ability to control the world and heaven and earth greatly increased. Therefore, to Su Fong, although the environment here affected him, the impact was far greater than others. Su Fong possessed a primal chaos divine spark. The power of yin and yang could fuse with any spiritual energy and energy. If Su Fong was willing to cultivate here, this would instead be a cultivation holy land for him. The bottom of the heavenly sect abyss was not as cold as other abyss. Instead, it was incomparably hot. The rocks were like they had just been fished out of a furnace. They were bright red and emitted waves of heat. There was also some magma that had not completely cooled down. On a cliff, there was a tree that was over 100 feet tall. Half of it was bare, destroyed by the magma. On the other half of the branches, there were over a dozen fruits hanging. These fruits were very strange. Xian Guang constantly changed colors of various colors, emitting waves of heavenly Tao aura from when heavenly Tao first opened, giving people a feeling of the great Tao changing. Chaos Tao fruit. Extracting the heavenly Tao aura from the chaos Tao fruit had the effect of increasing the quality of one's divine spark. Furthermore, after mortals consumed the Tao fruit, they could rapidly ascend to deity. The value of a chaos Tao fruit was comparable to a supreme-grade divine artifact. It could be seen how high its value was. At this moment, in the eyes of the many experts, what was hanging on the primordial Tao tree was not a fruit, but a shining top-grade divine artifact. However, when they saw the big goblin under the primordial Tao tree, it was as if a bucket of ice water had been poured over their heads, extinguishing the flames of greed in their hearts. Was it similar to a rock? Ji Zheng. By the way, Minutsuki Sana. Porcelain first, and then Huang Baojia 3. Dubin. Vats of Pang Pong with phenolic paste. Brookwood? Similar? Beer. What was even more shocking was the fact that it was from time to time. Zhao Mao forced Xian Luo, saying that I'm holding the hand of a parrot? What nonsense are you talking about? Is it difficult for a magpie to fly? Sticking together for a long time? Doctor? Weathertop Huanhe? B asterisk TCH? Male prostitute doctor? Base but this stone? Chow. Funan? What? Is it difficult to cut the words to the shore? Woo. You still want to scold me? Cure verdant shore sodium? 3. Haggard and still wearing clothes? Relief? Admonishing Inglian? Hum this stone? Constriction? Therefore, when the sun shines in the spring, the sun shines in the evening, and the sun shines in the grave. However, there was nothing strange about it. The untainted land was an ancient era. Monsters that could survive until now were all extremely powerful existences. How could the untainted ruins, a tiny untainted world, contain such a powerful being? Only those prehistoric monsters that had died many years ago could be revived with the help of Xie Yang's power and appear in the prehistoric ruins. Songshi? Sodium retort? Xieshi? Jian, however, this was only what he saw on the surface. This stone? Ji Zhizhen? Can't you see desert Sistanch, head, coward Liu fat gua, Shami, tomb red soul? Hawaiian bed? The fatter the dimple is, the more the Shamina loop is. Thin and thin. What made everyone incomparably shocked was that sure? Ogio Cliff was completely empty? Huan, is it a case of thorium? Han Yin waved his hand and swung his weight. Old Cliff, dysentery cormorant? To copy, moreover, the strength of the gods was severely restricted here. In the face of such a terrifying resurrected monster, there was no one who would not be afraid. This stone? Constriction? Flowing flash tier, hazelnut shepherd Jew? Do you want to hire a flash read? Sheath Zhijing Wuna? Xieshi? Su Fong's great perfection ability, carefully sensing stone? Xieshi? Ji? Na? Xie? Xiao? Gu Hui Xiong lotus hazelnut shepherd Juna? I. Xie? Yi? Ji? Yao? Vast stooped flowing flash read, Qiu, Qi Gue Juna? In? Su Fong could transform the pure Yang true fire into the 9 Yang divine fire, after fusing a dozen untainted spirit flames, and could even kill a heavenly god realm expert. This stone? Huishi Fan by Su, Xian Muju, Zhong Dixing Xian, Jilai Muju Na. Among the experts Jiang Baojun invited, the strongest, Jing Zhuoran, is only a 9th firmament celestial god. Due to the shackles of the environment, he can only wield the strength of an 8th firmament celestial god at most. Xieshi? Meijimu Lu? Xieshi 1, Xie, Shi and I Lu Lu. Su Fong frowned and was not in a hurry to make a move. However, the others did not think so. Yi Yang's figure flashed, and like a leaf fluttering in the wind, he silently floated towards the Chaos Dao tree. In the previous battle with Su Fong, not only did he suffer a great loss, he also lost face in front of everyone. He was anxious to regain his face, and at the same time, for the sake of the Chaos Dao fruit, he planned to use the great Dao of wind movement ability to return to the Wind Divine realm to seize the Dao fruit. Yi Yang's speed seemed slow, but it was unbelievably fast. Lily Stone, Qi, He Mujuna, Huimi Shua Tenlu, Pai Ba, Neon Ben Huan Wush. Fan Chong was not willing to fall behind. Thunder and fire flashed on his body, and he rushed out like a bolt of lightning. His speed was twice as fast as Yi Yang's, and he caught up with Yi Yang in an instant. The two arrived above the Chaos Dao tree almost at the same time. Suddenly, Resurrection Stone, Xian Mujuna, Pai Ba, Xian Mujuna, calling onlookers to criticize Xian Mu for stealing plaque, Xian Mujuna, Qi, Yi, Weisha Mujuna. Yi Yang and Fan Chong were pulled by gravity, and their bodies suddenly sank, almost falling onto the stone. Yao Hukuxi, Nuome, Simujuna. Yi Yang exploded his divine essence and formed a gust of wind around him. He finally broke free from the shackles of gravity and fled like the wind. Fan Chong was also extraordinary. He struck out a bolt of lightning, and a bolt of lightning quickly and violently struck the stone. Sheng Mujuna, AI, you, what a bunch of swordsmen. You, roar. You, Owigo. You, Panli. You, Mujuna. You, Chi. You, boom, boom. Yi Yang's back was hit by a meteorite. His body was like a kite with a broken string and was sent flying dozens of miles away. He barely managed to regain control of his body and spat out blood. He gritted his teeth and swallowed a handful of medicinal pills. Then, he flew back shakily. Fan Chong's left shoulder was hit by a meteorite. His shoulder was smashed into pieces, and his left arm turned into ashes in the meteorite's amazing flame power. He fell to the ground. He was also very strong. He activated a middle-grade flying sword and fled back to the others. Then, he began to activate his blood and qi to repair his divine body. Although these two experts were lucky enough to keep their lives, their vitality was greatly damaged. The resurrection stone that swallowed the primitive spiritual flame, everyone was so frightened that they quickly retreated dozens of miles until they reached the edge of the abyss. Next, Jiang Baojin commanded the masters to use all means to lure the tiger away from the mountain. You, you, rising and falling? Fruit stone? Was it because of the protection of the reed in bed? Jiazhan Huanqi. Hazel oyster lantered for fear of destroying the Dao fruit. No one dared to use powerful runes, divine weapons, or divine abilities to attack stone. Shun, what made everyone even more depressed was that this stone, Tatsia, waving dacron, scribbling testosterone swallowing, shape, playing with hazelnut? Which gamma? Do you mean to blow Murin? Ambition? Trick? Chu Guang nunnery only had a salary? Was he defeated? Carrying the seat and sending away the droplets, neon and anxious? Lanpin steps slow because it relies on I gap Tio invade Chun Shujing Zhuaran, along with more than a dozen experts whose cultivation bases were at the sixth firmament of celestial god realm and above, headed towards Shizhuaran. Huizhu, Wuji, thin and thin in the end, they still returned in defeat. There was even a seventh firmament celestial deity expert who was heavily injured, almost dying. The others were all injured to varying degrees. Any eye robber? Dyke? Looking at the Hydra? Did the fairies say that the neon robber was tired of lying? Resist arrest? Catch Wei Wei in the tail and suppress him? With this, everyone was at their wits' end. Su Fong activated his great perfection ability and carefully observed stone. Ingbian Guang? Huixingya? Spicy crisp Tao Tai? He found Jiang Baojin and said, I have a way to kill this stone? Yen? Still? Yen? Chun Pu Bang Shi Shao. Jiang Baojin was half convinced and half doubtful. You really have a way? You? Jing Zhuaran raised his sword-like eyebrows, revealing a look of disapproval. Everyone also cast doubtful gazes at Su Fong one after another. If not for Su Fong's astonishing strength and mysterious identity, there would definitely be a wave of mockery and ridicule. I don't have full confidence either. If young Master Jiang doesn't believe me, then forget it, Su Fong said indifferently. After thinking for a long time, Jiang Baojin no longer hesitated. Then let's try according to what you said. Su Fong's method was very simple, which was to let everyone continuously go forward and attack stone. Yen? Huixing? Mained ape Huizhong? Yen? How I? //. As for what method he used to kill stone, How Su Bao? Bed Master Tsong Yu? Chun Shun Shundong Duyan round range Bui Boom. Boom. Therefore, everyone was divided into 3 groups, taking turns to face Shirmu. Chang Yu? Panic? Lawsuit? Are you trying to fool me? Are you panicking at the side of the ship? At the same time, Jiang Baojin also arranged for people to take only stones. Oxum, Hazel, Oyster, and Soul, barging into the blue point of Miji. Just like that, everyone took turns to attack, and this continued for more than 10 days. Although they were taking turns to attack, there was no way to replenish their spiritual energy here. Everyone's consumption was not light, and the medicinal pills they had on them were also greatly depleted. Chapter 1895. Because the divine might of the Sui Yu cave was too terrifying, no one dared to get close to the fiery whirlpool. The primal spirit flame was the result of this trial, and it meant the qualification to participate in the Kamiko Hoshino tournament. It was a great opportunity, an opportunity to soar into the sky. At this time, no one was from the same sect, friends, or brothers. Everyone was doing their best to snatch the primal spirit flame. Fights broke out unavoidably. Almost 1 million people fought around the Sui Yu cave. Because of the rules of the trial, almost no one died, but injuries were unavoidable. Jing Zhuaran and the other 2 geniuses from the Star Billow God realm were able to keep calm at first. They stood guard not far away from Su Fong, afraid that he would be hurt. Later, when they saw more and more primal spirit flames converging toward the Sui Yu cave, their eyes gradually turned red. Of course, the 3 of them didn't need the qualification to participate in the Kamiko Hoshino tournament. However, the primal spirit flame was a primal spirit flame after all. It was very valuable, and it made them excited. Stay here and don't act rashly. Jing Zhuan shouted coldly at Su Fang. Then, he led the other two to the edge of the Sui Yu cave and joined the frenzied crowd. The primal spirit flame is the result of my yang vein. At the same time, it is also the result of my qualification to participate in the Godchild tournament. How can I miss it? Su Fang stood on the silver streaking sword and activated the wing's divine artifact behind him. Like a ray of light, he flew toward a cluster of primal spirit flames that was flying toward the Sui Yu cave. Collect! When he was about 300 meters away from the cluster of primal spirit flames, Su Fang released the power of his world and swept the primal spirit flame into a Dao bottle to seal it. The closer they were to the Sui Yu cave, the more primal spirit flames were attracted by the fiery whirlpool. However, there were also more people trying to snatch them. Su Fang had the silver flash sword and the wing god artifact, both of which were mid-grade god artifacts. After being activated by him, his speed was much faster than most heavenly god realm cultivators. Like lightning, the speed at which he collected the primitive spirit flames was naturally incomparably fast. In the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, Su Fang had collected more than a dozen spirit flames. However, compared to the dense spiritual flames, the dozen or so spiritual flames were like a drop in the ocean. How could Su Fang be satisfied? Poof! A revived big goblin was attracted by the fiery vortex. As it had fused with the ancient desolate spirit fire, the big goblin was attracted by the godly aura of the Sui Yu cave's explosion. The revived big goblin couldn't control its body anymore, and its body exploded as a ball of spirit fire rushed out from its body. This ball of spirit flames was formed by the fusion of more than 20 spirit flames. It immediately attracted the attention of many disciples. This spirit flame belongs to me. Su Fang reacted extremely quickly. He shot out on his silver streak sword and arrived near the spirit flame first. Just as he was about to put away the spirit flame, a cold shout came from the side. "You ant, are you qualified to obtain such a treasure?" Scram! It turned out to be the Sanskrit's genius, Fan Chong. He used a lightning elemental movement technique and was like a bolt of thunder. When he saw such a huge ball of spirit flames, he immediately rushed over. Was Fan Chong defeated at the bottom of the abyss of heaven's sanctum? Chow! Trick? 2 slender fingers, however, he was a 6th firmament heavenly god after all. He cultivated the great Tao of thunder and fire. His strength was still incomparably strong among the many disciples. If Su Fang didn't reveal his strength, it would be difficult for him to fight against him. It's inconvenient to reveal my strength here. I'll let Fan Chong have this ball of spirit flames for now. Su Fang had no choice but to reluctantly give it up. He controlled his silver-streaked sword to dodge to the side. Who knew? Fan Chong suddenly separated his palms and released a bolt of lightning and fire. It was like a peerless monster that attacked Su Fang rapidly. "Die, you ant!" Fan Chong revealed a sinister smile. Not only did he want to take the treasure, but he also wanted to kill Su Fang to vent his anger for being injured by Su Fang in public. Fan Chong, Su Fang, will remember this. Su Fang's heart was filled with murderous intent. He didn't have time to activate his divine weapon to dodge the attack. He didn't even have time to activate the defensive ability of the Earth Treasure Boots. He could only activate the power of the world in his body. A surge of yin and yang divine power formed a protective barrier around his body and forcefully blocked Fan Chong's violent attack. Kacha! A deafening crack of thunder sounded. Then, lightning and fire swept across the sky and swept Su Fang away. Like a kite with a broken string, he fell into the huge whirlpool of fire. A huge suction force enveloped Su Fang, forming a shocking shackle that made it difficult for him to move. Then, he was sucked into the Sui Yu cave along with the fire. "Let's see how you die." Fan Chong kept the spirit flame and laughed coldly. "Fan Chong, you're courting death." Jing Zhuan was shocked and angry when he saw Su Fang fall into the Sui Yu cave. He charged toward Fan Chong. Others might be afraid of the Star Billow Divine Realm and the 3 Divine Kings, but Sanskrit isn't. Fan Chong sneered disdainfully. He used a lightning elemental movement technique, and as his body flickered thunder rumbled, and he flew towards the place where the Brahmin clan genius was. Jing Zhuan and the other two Star Billow Divine Realm geniuses didn't know whether Su Fong was dead or alive. They couldn't answer to the three Fire Divine Lords. In their anger, they didn't hesitate to fight the Sanskrit prodigies. Fan Chang's terrifying attack injured Su Fong badly. He was sucked into the Suiyu cave. His divine body was enveloped by the terrifying divine power of flames. He felt like a piece of barbecued meat in a furnace. Sizzling sounds could be heard. His body was roasted until it withered and charred. The blood energy in his body seeped out of his body and was quickly evaporated. Boom, boom, boom. Su Fong fused all of his divine energy, life energy, true body, and energy with the Tao Palace of heaven and earth. An independent world appeared in the Suiyu cave. After transforming into a world, he was able to isolate himself from the terrifying divine power of flames. However, the world was also affected by the divine power of flames and started to shatter. In the myriad worlds, the world shackles were much stronger than the great world. Therefore, the divine power of the world in Su Fong's body was also suppressed. Its power wasn't as terrifying as it was in the great world. The torrent of divine power of flames in the Suiyu cave was too terrifying. Even a god like Xian Lingzi wouldn't be able to last long in such a terrifying divine power of flames. Su Fong, who had transformed into a world, was swept into the depths of the Suiyu cave by the torrent of flames. His world lasted for an incense stick's worth of time before it collapsed. He returned to his human form. Am I going to die in this Suiyu cave? Su Fong's heart sank to the bottom. However, he didn't despair. At the same time, he let the sunflower water mermaid in the Xianhuang Six Paths Pagoda shoot out the Xianying Qi. At the same time, he absorbed the 9 Yin Qi from the Origin's sacred mirror to wear down the divine power of flames around him. However, this wasn't a long-term plan. Sooner or later, he would be exhausted. Su Fong crazily swallowed pills. At the same time, he activated his body's recovery ability, hoping to fight for his last chance of survival. Qi, a burning flame, suddenly tore through the surrounding torrent of flames and shot towards Su Fong. This wasn't a flame, but a burning tongue. It was unknown what kind of fire-type monster's tongue it was. It suddenly appeared and wanted to pierce through Su Fong's chest. When it rains, it pours. How unlucky! Su Fong used all his strength to move his body and avoid his heart. That tongue of flame pierced through his heart and then dragged him out of the torrent of flames and into a cave. The cave was still burning with flames. Torrents of flames kept pouring in, but it was more than 10 times better than the outside. The monster that released the tongue of flame to shackle Su Fong was 100 feet in size. Its body was burning with flames, and its body looked like a lizard. It turned out to be a fire-type, big goblin fire lizard. Its strength was about the same as Jing Zhuan's. Just a demon god comparable to a 9th heaven god. You want to devour my Su Fong? Su Fong felt the tongue of flame that pierced through his chest. It was burning crazily and devouring his vitality. He immediately snorted. He couldn't resist the terrifying divine power of flames in the Suiyu cave, but he definitely wouldn't be afraid of a big goblin. Instead, he had to thank this big goblin for dragging him out of the boundless torrent of flames and escaping the predicament of death. Boom! Su Fong swallowed the medicinal pellets, and his recovered strength completely erupted. 9 Yang divine fire suddenly ignited in his body and wrapped around the tongue of the fire lizard, burning it crazily. Under the burning of the 9 Yang divine fire, the burning tongue of the fire lizard was also incinerated layer by layer. Although Su Fong's 9 Yang divine fire had just advanced, it was incomparably tyrannical. If it wasn't for Su Fong being in a heavily injured state, it could directly refine the tongue of the fire lizard. Insignificant god, you actually have such terrifying flames. The fire lizard spoke. It was both surprised and terrified. With a whoosh, it retracted its tongue. Su Fong suddenly put his palms together. When he separated them, the water of the mystic lake surged out. The sunflower water mermaid controlled the incomparably cold lake water and immediately drowned the fire lizard. Chi! Chi! The lake water was continuously evaporated by the high temperature. The fire lizard also crazily released the divine power of flames to clash with the sunflower water mermaid. Fire and water were incompatible. The confrontation between the two powerful big goblin caused a series of explosions. The water vapor rolled and waves of fire surged. The sunflower water mermaid's strength was one level higher than the fire lizard. However, due to the restrictions of the environment, it was now evenly matched with the fire lizard. Moreover, as the mystic water of the mystic lake continued to evaporate, its strength gradually decreased. Fortunately, the sunflower water mermaid still had a powerful primordial spirit attack ability. This was undoubtedly the fire lizard's weakness, so no one could do anything to the other in a short period of time. Su Fong, on the other hand, seized the time to recover. Fan Xiong, I, Su Fong, swear to kill you. Inspecting the injuries on his body, Su Fong's eyes flashed with incomparably sharp, killing intent. This time, it could be said to be disastrous. Fan Xiong's crazy attack was mostly blocked by Su Fong's yin-yang divine power, so his injuries were not very serious. What was worse was that the terrifying flames in the Suiyu cave had burned Su Fong's body. He had lost close to 60% of his life force. There were burn marks all over his body. In some places, his flesh and blood were even incinerated. Even his bones were incinerated. In addition, Su Fong had transformed into a world. His divine energy, physical body, yang qi, world force, and other energies were consumed to the limit that Su Fong could bear. Even in the great world, Su Fong was rarely in such a serious state. His killing intent towards Fan Xiong, Fan Su, and Sanskrit was simply enough to burn the sky. Chapter 1896. After Su Fong formed a seal, he tried to activate the yellow spring blood sea. Who knew that under such heavy injuries, he could not shatter his body. Su Fong could only take out the silver-streaked sword and forcefully activate some of its power. The sword light slashed a large wound on his heart. Then, Su Fong took out a handful of pills and pressed them into the wound. Blood qi surged, and the pills were absorbed into his heart. Bang! 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 His heart beat rapidly as the majestic blood qi quickly refined the pills. Then, his heart was like a water pump, rapidly sending the pills to his body, rapidly recovering his body and replenishing his energy. At the same time, Su Fong also activated his Black Lotus True Body, Blood Transformation True Body, and Dragon Subduing True Body to recover his life force. After Su Fong's Perfection Realm Body transformed into a Divine Body, his various true bodies also followed suit. Although the three physiques were not as strong as those in the Great World, their recovery ability was far beyond that of ordinary gods. After about half an hour, Su Fong finally recovered close to 20%. Although he was still heavily injured, he finally escaped from the brink of death. At this time, the sunflower water mermaid was already at a disadvantage. The surrounding water in the mystic lake was evaporated, and its demon body was constantly emitting white smoke. The fire lizard was extremely proud. You are a water-type demon. If we were in the water, I would still be afraid of you. Now that we are in the Suiyu cave, you can only be devoured by me. And you, human, although you are heavily injured, your blood qi is still so majestic. After devouring you, my demon power will definitely increase greatly. A big goblin dares to be so arrogant. Su Fong smiled coldly and embarrassedly as he flipped his hand and took out the primeval chaos sacred mirror. Su Fong now had 56 yang meridians, and his purple Qi Dharma spirit had transformed. His cultivation had also increased to the 5th sky of true God, and his ability to control the divine mirror had also increased. Although he had only recovered a small portion of his yang energy, he could still barely control the divine mirror. Qi. Red light shot out from the mirror, forming a light screen that instantly enveloped the fire lizard. It turned into the 9 yang true fire that spread and burned. Although this fire lizard was also a powerful fire attribute great demon, under the tyrannical divine might of the nine yang true fire, its demonic fire was quickly incinerated into nothingness. Then, its demonic body was refined by the nine yang true fire. Its excrement and urine were mixed with the smell of impurities. It was incomparably disgusting. The fire lizard struggled, but under the divine mirror's supreme, divine mirror's true fire, all its struggles were in vain. The sunflower water mermaid flashed behind Su Fong. It was so scared that it trembled and curled up into a ball. The might of the primordial sacred mirror was still fresh in its memory. Su Fong kept the Kuei water mermaid into the Xian Huang Six Paths Pagoda before he stripped off a yang god and continued burning the fire lizard with the divine mirror. His main body continued to devour all kinds of pills and spiritual items. The blood crystals, pills, and spiritual items that he had prepared to replenish his life force played a huge role at this time, quickly replenishing the huge loss of life force. After about 10 days, Su Fong's life force finally recovered about 50 to 60%, and his divine body also recovered a little. Only then did Su Fong control divine mirror and keep the fire lizard in his inner world. In his inner world, Su Fong was the absolute ruler. A thought could cause the heavens and earth to rise and fall, and a look could change the weather. Boom, boom, boom. At first, the fire lizard was still struggling, but under Su Fong's divine mirror's divine mirror, the fire lizard obediently submitted, and Su Fong planted a seal seed in its spiritual pearl and demon core. After dealing with the fire lizard, Su Fong continued to control divine mirror, facing the outside of the cave. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Divine mirror released a suction force, and the flames in the Sui cave, along with the prehistoric inflammation that was flying towards the depths of the Sui cave, were all devoured by the divine mirror and sucked into the mysterious space. How terrifying was the divine mirror's absorption ability! The torrent of flames was as thick and viscous as lava, and it rolled into the divine mirror, causing the flames in the Sui cave to dim by half. The amount of spiritual flames that were sucked into the divine mirror space, along with the flames, was also countless. Fan Chong, you would never have dreamed that by throwing me into the Sui cave, I can avoid being seen and use the divine mirror to absorb spiritual flames. With so many people fighting for spiritual flames outside, how much can they snatch? With the divine mirror, I can absorb so many spiritual flames. The first place in the elemental ruins trial will definitely be mine. Su Fong looked at the divine mirror that was devouring the flames crazily, and he was overjoyed. This was a blessing in disguise. Buzz, it continued to devour for 3 days. The divine flame in the Sui cave suddenly disappeared, and the spiritual flames absorbed by the divine mirror decreased. The fire essence in the flames also became less pure. The primordial chaos, sacred mirror, suddenly trembled and automatically stopped absorbing. Clearly, the prehistoric inflammation in the depths of the Sui cave had retracted its divine flame. Su Fong kept the divine mirror in his inner world, separated a yang spirit, and continuously absorbed the yang qi from the divine mirror for the dragon bird to devour. The dragon bird needed to constantly devour the pure yang qi in order to grow stronger. The divine mirror absorbed the fire essence in the Sui cave and turned it into yang qi, which was more than 10 times purer than the pure yang qi that the dragon bird absorbed directly from the sun. Furthermore, it was extremely vast, and it was very beneficial to the dragon bird. Sensing the yang qi, the dragon bird cried out excitedly, and then opened its mouth to suck it in. At the same time, Su Fong also separated a part of the yang qi for the fire lizard to absorb and recover quickly. The primal chaos spirit flames absorbed by the divine mirror were transferred to the Tao bottle by Su Fong. After making a rough estimate, Su Fong was dumbfounded by the sheer number of spirit flames he had. The divine mirror absorbed almost 1,000 spirit flames this time, and the space inside the Tao bottle almost couldn't hold it. Su Fong estimated that 400 to 500 spirit flames would be enough to take first place in the trial and obtain the opportunity to participate in the Godchild competition. If the rest were used to cultivate the 9 suns, 9 transformations, and the illusory fire cloud, how many yang veins would be formed, and how high would the fire cloud emperor physique reach? Fan Chong, Fan Su, when I come out of seclusion, it will be your doomsday. Su Fong smiled coldly and entered the cavern of time. He took out the Tao bottle, opened his mouth, and sucked the spirit flames inside into a line of fire that he swallowed in one gulp. Su Fong swallowed more than a dozen spirit flames in one gulp. Boom! The spirit flames have been refined by the divine mirror's aura, and they contain the power of yin and yang. Su Fong easily fused them. Boundless fire-type natural energy of heaven and earth was absorbed by his divine palace, physical body, yang veins, and world tree. The pure, boundless fire-type essence caused Su Fong's cultivation to rise at an astonishing speed. At the same time, the fire-type essence burned under the control of the illusory fire cloud mantra, causing Su Fong's fire cloud emperor physique to rapidly transform. His yang energy and world tree were also madly accumulating and transforming. After the spirit flames were fused, Su Fong continued to devour them like crazy, as if he wouldn't stop until he achieved his goal. Just like that, Su Fong settled in the cavern of time for more than 200 years. Only 20 years had passed in the outside world. During this time, Su Fong had devoured more than 100 primal chaos spirit flames. It was a little crazy. Su Fong, who was in a state of burning fire cloud, suddenly spewed out tribulation aura. Then he instantly ignited tribulation fire, forming a burning momentum on his body. It merged with the burning fire cloud, forming an impact force that caused Su Fong to fall into great pain. He crazily devoured a large amount of spirit flames, as well as various pills and spiritual items, especially stones. Li Nan, Li Jun, 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 Li Tao, Li Jun, Li Jun. Su Fong flew out of the cavern of time. At this time, his entire body was enveloped in flames, and his entire body was burning. The immense pain made Su Fong feel as if he was being burned to ashes and was about to disappear from the world. In the unbearable pain of ordinary people, the tribulation fire slowly disappeared after more than half a month. Su Fong's divine body welcomed a transformation. His divine body, divine palace, and divine aperture were constantly changing, and his yang spirit was also transforming. Sixth firmament, true God. After experiencing a life-and-death situation, Su Fong stepped into another realm. In these years of cultivation, not only did he successfully advance to the 6th firmament, the 57th yang meridian was also on the verge of birth. The fire cloud emperor physique and the divine might of flames had also reached an astonishing level. Su Fong activated the fire cloud emperor physique. Boom! A cloud of fire seeped out of his body and rapidly burned. Not only his palms, but his entire divine body turned into a burning cloud of fire, and his body could not be seen. At this time, although the height of the fire cloud emperor physique was not as terrifying as when he turned into a cloud of fire in the great world, it allowed Su Fong to have the strength to defeat a peak 9th firmament celestial god. At the same time, the power of the 9 yang divine fire naturally became more domineering and powerful. However, compared to the 9 yang true fire, it was still far inferior. Like Su Fong, relying on devouring spiritual items and pills to increase his cultivation, there were originally huge side effects. If his realm was not enough, his divine body would even explode because he could not control it. However, Su Fong had the primal chaos divine spark and the power of yin and yang that could fuse any energy. In addition to his extremely powerful divine body and vast divine abode, these side effects naturally did not exist. After devouring a large amount of chaos yang energy, the dragon bird also underwent a shocking transformation. However, Su Fong would not use his ability easily. He kept it as a trump card to deal with resurrected experts. At this time, the fire lizard had also recovered its former strength and had improved a lot. It was about to reach the peak of the ninth firmament celestial god realm. The chaos yang energy's effect on the big goblin was extraordinary. This unruly fire-type big goblin and the sunflower water mermaid were completely loyal to Su Fong in a short period of time. Su Fong returned to the time cavern to continue stabilizing his state. Cultivation had no concept of time. Soon, more than 100 years had passed. Of course, it was the time inside the time cavern. Su Fong's cultivation stabilized at the sixth firmament true god realm. He originally planned to break through the Yang Meridian in one go and strive to birth the 57th Yang Meridian. He could sense that there were countless gods flying towards the depths of the Sui Cavern. Fan Su, Fan Chong, Xia Qijuan, Jiang Baozhen, and the others were among them. Chapter 1897. Who would have thought that Xia Qijuan would really bring people into the Sui cave? Su Fong quickly concealed his aura and hid in the cave. There were more than 10,000 people who entered the Sui cave, and all of them were heavenly god experts. Kuan Su divine sects, special disciples, and geniuses from other forces were all present. More than 10,000 gods flew into the depths of the Sui cave, and no one would have thought that Su Fong, who they had already thought would die, was spying on them from the side. Xia Qijuan colluded with the Sanskrit disciples and geniuses from other forces to bring so many Kuan Su divine sect disciples into the Sui cave. Obviously, they are aiming for the prehistoric inflammation. To me, this might be an opportunity. It's related to the primordial earth flame, a supreme treasure of the primordial world. As long as there's a chance, I have to fight for it. Even if I can't get the prehistoric inflammation, I will think of a way to kill Fan Su and Fan Chong. Su Fong thought for a while and immediately made a decision. He changed into a set of Kuan Su divine sect disciple robe, and at the same time changed his appearance with his perfect physique. He looked like an ordinary Kuan Su divine sect disciple. Only the aura of a sixth heaven true god was hard to change. Su Fong had no choice but to use the heaven secret life shrinking technique to make his aura become illusory and hard to grasp. There were many experts who purposely hid their aura, making it impossible for others to grasp their true strength. No one would bother to investigate. Whoosh, Su Fong left the cave and rode on a low-grade flying sword. He quickly caught up with the group and blended in with them. Apart from the geniuses from the external forces, the rest of the participants were from the various dojos of the Kuan Su God sect. Since there were so many of them, it was impossible for everyone to know each other. Thus, no one noticed Su Fong among them. The huge group continued to descend. The depth of the Sui cave was beyond the imagination of Su Fong and the others. They flew for more than 10 days, and although they didn't dare to go too fast, they still didn't reach the bottom of the Sui cave. The deeper one went into the Sui cave, the more difficult it became. The divine might of the primordial earth flame from last time had already disappeared. However, the Sui cave was still filled with blazing flames. Even true gods would find it hard to survive in this place. The heavenly deity disciples were also severely restricted in their cultivation, and they couldn't absorb the natural qi to replenish themselves. Another 3 days later, finally, they arrived at the bottom of the Sui cave, and a beautiful underground world appeared in front of their eyes. In the depths of the Sui cave was a vast smelted cave. The ground, the ceiling, and the walls of the karst cave were inlaid with a large number of godly stones, raw stones, and other materials. There were also some strange spiritual plants growing in the cave, which were mainly of the earth and fire attributes. They were shining brilliantly, illuminating the entire cave. At the same time, there were also many gremlins and big goblin. Many of the experiencers dispersed in a hubbub as they frantically dug and collected various materials and spiritual items. As for those spiritual monsters and big goblin, they could only be slaughtered in the face of so many deities. After a round of frantic plundering, almost everyone had a good harvest. It could be considered a small fortune. Su Fong mixed in with the crowd and looted like everyone else, But in reality, he was activating his great perfection realm ability and paying attention to Xia Qijuan, Fan Su, and the others. They didn't fight for the treasures that were almost everywhere. Instead, they stayed far away from the crowd and gathered in a relatively small, smelted cave. Su Fang's great perfection realm hearing allowed him to eavesdrop on their conversation without missing a word. The dozen or so people exchanged greetings for a while. Xia Qijuan suddenly said, "Fan Chong, aren't you a bit too rash? How could you throw that trash Mo Fenghua into the Sui Yu cave in front of everyone? The three supreme geniuses of the Star Below God realm have already left the primitive ruins, and the three divine kings and Xianlingzi must have learned of Mo Fenghua's death by now. There will be trouble." Fan Chong chuckled indifferently. "When I saw that ant, I couldn't hold back for a moment and killed him." Fan Su said domineeringly, "He's just a piece of trash." Would the three divine kings fall out with Sanskrit because of a dead person? As for Xianlingzi, without the support of Master Koan Su, he's not worth mentioning. There's no need to pay attention to him. That trash should have died long ago. It's too easy for him to die just like that," Xia Yunji said coldly. There was still a trace of resentment in her voice. Su Fang heard this and couldn't help but gnash his teeth. "Xia Yunji, you bitch, I'll take care of you sooner or later." Fan Su sighed regretfully. "I was planning to humiliate Mo Fenghua in the duel and vent concubine Yun's anger. I didn't expect him to die so easily. It's a bit of pity. Fan Chong, your actions this time were indeed a bit reckless." Fan Chong chuckled indifferently. "Xia Qijuan, Fan Su, this young master was not invited here to listen to you talk about a dead piece of trash," a handsome but indifferent young man suddenly said coldly and embarrassedly. Jiang Baozhen smiled. "Young Master Yi Kong is right. Let's get back to the topic. Young Master Xia, have you thought it through?" Xia Qijuan fell into silence and revealed a hesitant expression. Fan Su advised, "Brother Xia, what's there to hesitate about? Last time, when the divine sect's upper echelons entered the Sui Yu cave, although they weren't able to catch the prehistoric inflammation, they heavily injured it. Right now, this prehistoric treasure is recovering somewhere in the Sui Yu cave. Furthermore, in the prehistoric ruins, the earthly flame is also shackled and suppressed by the world. It's hard for it to display the strength of a heaven god. Otherwise, it would be suppressed by the prehistoric ruins' world energy. Thus, catching the prehistoric inflammation isn't impossible. However, the prehistoric inflammation is still a prehistoric treasure. How terrifying is its strength? It's not like you didn't see its godly might before. Moreover, every single one of these disciples that entered the Sui Yu cave this time are the elites of the Koan Su God sect. How can this young master watch idly as they give their lives away?" Xia Qijuan shook his head and said slowly. He looked like he couldn't bear it. "Brother Xia is truly benevolent," Fan Su praised. Then, his lips curled into a cruel smile. "In order to become an unparalleled expert, the lives of mere disciples are not worth mentioning. According to our previous agreement, as long as the earthly flame is successfully caught, Brother Xia will get half of it. If you can fuse with this half of the earthly flame, you will become the #1 genius of the divine realm of Koan Su. Even the Star Below God realm will have a place for you. There's also a high chance of you becoming Kamiko Hoshino." Jiang Baozhen's eyes flashed. "For 3 times the benefits, I can even sell my own father. How can young Master Xia's benefits be just 3 times? It's just sacrificing a bunch of useless disciples. Why do you need to be so benevolent?" After a moment of hesitation, Fan Su continued, "Brother Xia, what you're worried about is that Koan Su will pursue this matter. Brother Xia, you don't have to worry about this. Even if I activate my clan's supreme divine weapon and use a supreme divine ability, Koan Su won't be able to find any clues. Even if they do, so what? When Brother Xia fuses with the prehistoric inflammation, you will be an unparalleled genius. How can Koan Su punish you then?" Xia Yunji also advised, "Brother, don't worry. If grandfather pursues this matter, young Master Fan Su will definitely ask Sanskrit to intercede for you. grandfather will have no choice but to give face to Sanskrit. Xia Qijuan sighed, fine. For the future of Kuan Su's divine sect, I can only give the lives of these disciples to young Master Fan Su. After this, I will compensate them. Hypocrite. The cold-looking Yi Yongkong sneered. He didn't care about Xia Qijuan's face at all. Thank you for your praise, young Master Yi Yongkong. Xia Qijuan smiled faintly, as if he didn't care at all. It was obvious that he was afraid of Yi Yongkong. Jiang Baozhen clapped and laughed. Young Master Xia is wise. From now on, Kuan Su's divine realm will have another unparalleled genius. As for this young master, I will also have a large sum of divine jade treasures. Ha ha! After that, they no longer talked about capturing the prehistoric spirit flame. Instead, they talked about some interesting things. Su Fang also stopped eavesdropping. Xia Qijuan, you've lost your mind. Although Su Fang didn't know the details of their plan, he could roughly understand it from their conversation. It was nothing more than using these Kuan Su's divine sect disciples as cannon fodder while they reaped the benefits and split the prehistoric inflammation. These tens of thousands of disciples were all elites of Kuan Su's divine sect. If they all died here, it would be a great loss to Kuan Su's divine sect. Xia Qijuan sacrificed so many disciples for his own sake. He was so ruthless and callous. It was simply outrageous. Wealth comes from danger. For the sake of the prehistoric inflammation, I can only take the risk out of desperation and pull chestnuts out of the fire. As for these disciples, if I can save them, I will. If I can't, they can only depend on their own luck. Su Fang's deep eyes flashed with decisiveness. Even if he couldn't get the prehistoric inflammation, he couldn't let Xia Qijuan, Fan Su, and the others succeed. After the Kuan Su's divine sect disciples were almost done looting at the bottom of the Suiyu cave, Xia Qijuan gathered everyone and continued to venture deeper. A rolling magma ocean appeared before everyone's eyes. Xia Qijuan ordered the Kuan Su's divine sect disciples to open up a tunnel in the magma ocean. He then led everyone deeper into the magma ocean. Finally, they encountered a powerful barrier 1,000 zhang deep. This barrier was created by Kuan Su Master and many of the higher-ups of the Kuan Su God sect to prevent the primordial earth flame from escaping. This meant that the primordial earth flame was in the space inside the barrier. Xia Qijuan used a hand seal to open a door on the barrier. Tens of thousands of people entered the barrier. The space within the barrier wasn't a magma world, but a 1,000-li-wide object. This object was very peculiar. It emitted a desolate aura and majestic, pure earth and fire elemental essence aura. It also had an indescribable, mysterious, and wonderful aura. The entire object was like a huge cocoon. There was a deep hole in the center, as if something was trying to break out of its shell. Chapter 1898. This is where the prehistoric inflammation was born. After being injured by the upper echelons of the divine sect, it has been hiding here to recuperate. 8. Read books, find it and work together to capture it. This young master will definitely not go back on his promise of divine artifacts and divine jades. The divine sect will definitely reward all of you. Furthermore, before entering the desolate ruins, the leader had given me a secret order. The person who has made great contributions in capturing the earthly flames will be able to directly obtain a spot to participate in the Star Billow Divine Sun competition. Generous rewards would definitely attract brave men. Xia Qijuan's enticement caused the eyes of many disciples to burn with excitement. Without waiting for his voice to finish, they all scattered in search of the prehistoric inflammation. An area of 1,000 miles wasn't a large area for heavenly gods. Very quickly, they all found something. Prehistoric inflammation, I was the first to discover it. The merit of capturing the prehistoric inflammation belongs to none other than me. From the deep pit, a disciple cried out in surprise. Who would have thought that in the next moment there would be a shrill scream, and then there would be no more sound? Prehistoric inflammation is in that deep pit. The disciple who first discovered the prehistoric inflammation had clearly been killed by the prehistoric inflammation. However, his encounter didn't scare the many disciples who were eager to contribute. Their eyes burned with a bright light as they rushed towards the deep pit. Su Fong, who was mixed in with the crowd, also pretended to fly towards the deep pit. Seeing Xia Qijuan, Fan Su, and the others leisurely, Su Fong coldly snorted in his heart. Taking advantage of everyone's attention being attracted by the prehistoric inflammation, Su Fong's figure flashed and landed on the ground. He hid behind a huge rock and at the same time slightly activated the Heaven's secret life shrinking technique to conceal his presence. Boom! An incomparably violent and scorching flame shot up into the sky from the deep pit. The astonishing might of the flames covered the entire area and even radiated outside the barrier, causing the lava outside to roar and boil as it attacked the barrier. The divine might of the flames swept out, and the divine bodies of the hundreds of disciples in the front burst into flames. In a short span of 3 to 4 breaths, they were reduced to ashes amidst miserable screams. The disciples behind him were also affected. Their divine bodies' defenses were penetrated by the godly power of the flames, and they were badly burned. The deaths of over 100 disciples extinguished the greed in everyone's hearts, and they all retreated. Prehistoric inflammation. Su Fong activated his great perfection ability and carefully observed the prehistoric inflammation. The firelight floated above the deep pit and condensed into a human-shaped shadow. The flames surged like waves, and there were streaks of red light in it. They looked like meridians, but also like the marks of the heavenly Tao. The human-shaped shadow emitted an extremely ancient aura of the great Tao of earth and fire, which was very different from the aura of the divine world outside the primitive ruins. At the same time, the human-shaped shadow also emitted an astonishingly high temperature. Not only did the disciples feel their divine bodies being burned, but even their primordial spirits and consciousness also felt a burning pain. In the aura of the prehistoric inflammation, other than the primordial aura of the fusion of the earth and fire elements, there seems to be an extremely well-hidden aura that I can't sense. What's that? Su Fong sensed that there was something wrong with the aura of the prehistoric inflammation. He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows, and then he activated his heaven-prying eye. After the transformation of the purple cloud Dharma spirit, Su Fong's ability to communicate and control nature had increased. Naturally, the ability of the heaven-prying eye had also increased. With the heaven-prying eye, Su Fong could see things that other gods couldn't, including the energy of heaven and earth and the laws of nature. Within the prehistoric inflammation, there was actually an extremely powerful aura hidden. It was evil, brutal, and boundless. Could it be that there's actually a demon hidden within the prehistoric inflammation? Su Fong was very shocked. At the same time, he was also very surprised. Logically speaking, the fire elemental energy within the prehistoric inflammation was the masculine energy of heaven and earth. It had the ability to restrain demonic energy and evil energy. It was impossible for such an evil aura to appear within the prehistoric inflammation. At this moment, Law suddenly spoke. Su Fong, I'm afraid that this prehistoric inflammation is out of everyone's expectations. You have to be careful. The slightest bit of carelessness will cause you to fall here. I advise you to be ready to escape at any time. Law, could it be that you know something? If my guess is correct, when the prehistoric inflammation was first conceived, a powerful ancient demon used a planting technique. It was conceived together with the prehistoric inflammation, and then it was born together. The prehistoric inflammation is a treasure of heaven and earth. Can a planting technique be used? Do you think that the demon race can only use the planting technique on living beings? The demon race is not only powerful, but also has countless unfathomable magical means. Many powerful demon races in the myriad worlds not only use human cultivators and big goblin spirit beasts as embryos to cultivate the demon race cultivation method, but many powerful beings, as well as spiritual objects of heaven and earth, can become the embryos of their planting technique. Pausing for a moment, Law then said something shocking. If the demon god is strong enough, they can even use a part of the divine realm, or even a part of the star field, as the embryo of their planting method. There was a roar in Su Feng's head. Law's words were simply sensational. The demon god who can use the prehistoric inflammation as the embryos and use the planting technique is not something you can fight against. And this demon god is an extremely rare and very strange demon in ancient times. It is called the flame demon. Its body is actually a flame born of heaven and earth, but it is different from ordinary flames. It contains an extremely evil fire poison, but it is a little strange. The aura of this flame demon is not very strong, and it is a little chaotic. Could it be because it was injured by Kuan Su? I don't know the specific reason. In short, you should be careful. Law said tirelessly. Just as Su Feng and Law were communicating, Xia Qijuan loudly ordered many disciples of Kuan Su's divine sect to attack the prehistoric inflammation. However, these disciples were not stupid. In the face of such a powerful prehistoric inflammation, what was the difference between going up and dying? A bunch of trash. Since you dare to disobey this young master's orders, don't blame this young master for being ruthless. Xia Qijuan's eyes flashed with ruthlessness, and he said to Fan Su, "Young Master Fan Su, I'll leave it to you. You should have done this long ago." Fan Su suddenly took out a large golden bell. It was only 3 feet tall, and there were figures formed by interweaving divine runes sitting on it. It emitted a sacred and ancient aura. Seeing this divine artifact, Xia Qijuan, Jiang Baozhen, and the others all showed expressions of envy and reverence. Xia Qijuan said, "To be able to see young Master Fan Su's natal divine artifact, the God-suppressing bell, is an eye-opener. It is just a replica of my clan's divine artifact, the Nirvana Bell. Its current quality is supreme grade. Compared to the Nirvana Bell, its power is less than 1/10,000th. Right now, I can only use 20 to 30% of its power at most." Fan Su said very modestly, but his eyes were filled with pride. You can only use 20 to 30% of the power of a supreme-grade divine artifact? Yi Yankong's cold eyes flashed with a trace of jealousy. Natal divine artifacts were different from other divine artifacts. They needed to be constantly nourished by blood, divine essence, and various spiritual items. Only then could they continuously improve their quality along with their owner's cultivation. To be able to improve a natal divine artifact to supreme grade was something to be proud of. From this, it could be seen that Sanskrit had spared no effort in nurturing him. It was already quite difficult for ordinary celestial gods to activate a small portion of a medial-grade divine artifact's power. Fan Su was able to activate 20 to 30% of the power of a supreme-grade divine artifact with his 6th firmament celestial god cultivation base. It was enough to show that his talent was amazing. This made Yi Yankong, the young master of the wind divine world, extremely jealous. "Fellow tribesmen, I need your help to activate the God-suppressing bell's power. Please do not hold back to help me." As he spoke, Fan Su flicked his finger and a beam of bloodlight landed on the God-suppressing bell. But the God-suppressing bell emitted a low, buzzing sound. Immediately after, Fan Chong and a dozen other Sanskrit geniuses formed a formation and circulated their divine essence. Through the formation's divine might, they gathered all their power onto Fan Su. Xia Qijuan, Yi Yankong, Jiang Baozhen, and the others all had solemn expressions. They quickly sat cross-legged on the ground and formed the same hand seal to protect their divine apertures. This hand seal was obviously taught to them by Fan Su long ago. It could be used to defend against the God-suppressing bell's influence on them. Fan Su formed dazzling hand seals one after another before he finally shouted, "God-suppressing bell rings, heaven and earth submit." Dang! The God-suppressing bell rang, and the space shook. A pure white, sacred mystic light and a loud, sacred sound of a bell swept out in all directions. Under the impact of the Xianguang, over 10,000 Kuan Su's divine sect disciples felt their divine apertures shake. Their primordial spirits were in a daze, and their eyes became dazed. From the Xianguang, white figures separated and entered the glabella of every disciple, entering their divine apertures. 9 true, 9 Sun Su Fong was already prepared. Furthermore, his divine aperture's defense was definitely not weaker than a peak 9th heaven celestial god expert. At this moment, his divine aperture's defense was also shaken. The divine aperture's ocean shook violently. When he circulated his primordial spirit's power and calmed down the commotion in his divine aperture, he suddenly saw a white-robed man sitting cross-legged above his sun's spirit. From the looks of it, it was Fan Su. However, this Fan Su's projection was emitting a sacred light. His entire body emitted a sacred and noble aura. In front of this projection, Su Fong felt a thought gushing out from the depths of his primordial spirit's consciousness. It wanted to bow down to Fan Su and listen to his orders. It wanted to hand over its fate to him. This God-suppressing bell is not ordinary. It's similar to my eternal purple sun furnace. Furthermore, its power is much stronger than the eternal purple sun furnace. With over 10 people activating it together, it can actually control over 10,000 celestial gods. However, to act mysterious in front of me, Su Fong, you can consider yourself unlucky, Fan Su. The thing I'm least afraid of is primordial spirit and fate-type attacks. Chapter 1899. Listen to my command. Capture the prehistoric inflammation. Fan Su's majestic voice was filled with holiness as it was transmitted to every disciple's ears through the divine might of the God-suppressing bell. Like a supreme ruler giving the order, many Kuan Su divine sect disciples revealed fanatical expressions as they charged towards the prehistoric inflammation. All sorts of divine abilities, divine weapons, and rune attacks surged towards the prehistoric inflammation like a tidal wave. Under such a fierce attack, the prehistoric inflammation seemed powerless as its divine might was suppressed to the extreme. However, it wasn't easy to capture the prehistoric inflammation. Fan Su saw that the desolate earth flame's aura was weakening and ordered hundreds of disciples to go forward and shackle it. Who would have thought that the desolate earth flame would suddenly burst out with a tongue of fire that wrapped around these disciples? Then the flames on the desolate earth flame's body surged and directly swallowed them into its body, and there was no more sound. Under Fan Su's command, the disciples continued their fierce attacks towards the prehistoric inflammation. The prehistoric inflammation seemed to be enraged as it suddenly erupted with a shocking divine might that swallowed no less than 300 disciples, causing even more fierce attacks. After about 30 breaths of time, the God-suppressing bell's power clearly weakened. Some of the stronger special disciples gradually stopped listening to Fan Su's command and showed signs of recovering. Fan Su formed another seal and activated the God-suppressing bell. A mighty and sacred bell sound erupted as he regained control over the disciples. It was obvious that Fan Su was barely able to activate the God-suppressing bell. After activating the God-suppressing bell once more, not only did Fan Su's face turn pale and his aura become unstable, the other 10 or so Sanskrit geniuses were the same. Continue attacking. As soon as Fan Su's voice fell, the special disciples charged towards the primeval earth flame without any regard for the consequences. This time, the attacks were even crazier. The disciples were like moths to a flame, fearless of death as they charged forward wave after wave. It was tragic and shocking Su Fong. The prehistoric inflammation seemed to be suppressed, but would occasionally erupt with divine might and devour the disciples. After devouring thousands of disciples, the flame shadow formed by prehistoric inflammation gradually became real. There was a strong blood aura in the flame that looked similar to Law's, like burning blood. The aura of prehistoric inflammation seemed to be constantly weakening, but in fact, its body was constantly accumulating an incomparably vast amount of energy. Something's wrong. Su Fong saw some clues. The prehistoric inflammation was actually devouring the qi and blood of the deity, condensing a body of flesh and blood. This was definitely not an ability that a prehistoric spiritual creature could have. It was clearly a technique that only the demon race could have. Law said, this ancient demon god was obviously possessed by prehistoric inflammation through planting, or was born together with prehistoric inflammation. He himself is prehistoric inflammation, and prehistoric inflammation is him. This flame demon is truly cunning. To think that it would use prehistoric inflammation as bait to continuously devour lifeblood energy and condense a demon god's body. Su Fong looked at the falling disciples of Kuan Su's divine sect and couldn't bear to see it. Although the life and death of these disciples had nothing to do with him, seeing so many people become powerful nutrients for the demon god moved his Dao heart. Looking at the cold Fan Su, the expressionless Xia Qijuan, and the indifferent or disdainful Jiang Baojun, Yang Kong, and the others, Su Fong's eyes flashed with determination. No, I have to stop all of this. Law's tone was also solemn. When this flame demon devours all the disciples here, it will become incomparably powerful. It is very likely that it will break through the world seal of the prehistoric ruins and escape from the outside world. At that time, even Guru Kuan Su will be unable to do anything to it. The entire Kuan Su divine realm will face a huge disaster. Damn Xia Qijuan and Fan Su. They fell into the flame demon's trap and didn't even know it. A bunch of idiots who deserve to be killed. Su Fong looked at Xia Qijuan and the others with rage burning in his eyes. The Dao rune of destiny flashed in his mind and burned Fan Su's image into nothingness. The next moment, Su Fong used the wings of Fire Cloud and Fire Cloud Step. His entire body turned into a fire cloud as he shot out from the ground and went straight for the god-suppressing bell in the sky. Fan Su and the others only saw a flash of fire, and a figure appeared beside the god-suppressing bell. This person is actually not under the god-suppressing bell's control. How is that possible? Xia Qijuan exclaimed in disbelief. Fan Su, Fan Chong, and more than a dozen other Sanskrit geniuses worked together to activate the god-suppressing bell. Even he, an elder of the sky, celestial realm, had to be prepared in advance. Otherwise, he would be affected by the bell's sound and be controlled by it. There was actually a sixth firmament true God realm disciple of the Kuan Su divine sect who wasn't under the god-suppressing bell's control. This was indeed something that was inconceivable. Trying to steal this young master's life divine weapon? You really don't know what's good for you. Fan Su shouted domineeringly. What was a life divine weapon? In other words, the god-suppressing bell was a part of Fan Su's body. He found it ridiculous that someone tried to steal his body. At the same time, he was extremely angry. More than a dozen Sanskrit geniuses exploded with power and gathered it on Fan Su's body through the array. Fan Su struck out another hand seal and activated the god-suppressing bell, causing it to explode with a shocking boom. This time, the god-suppressing bell could control the consciousness of the primordial spirit. It was targeted at Su Fong alone, so one could imagine the pressure Su Fong was under. Fortunately, he cultivated the undying soul code, so his divine aperture's defense and yang spirit were incomparably stable and powerful. At the same time, he had the Dark Valley Origin Pearl, a supreme primordial spirit Dao artifact. In addition, he had the Heaven's Secret Life shrinking technique, which could break all primordial spirit forbidden techniques. The Sunflower Water Mermaid also released her primordial spirit power. With so many primordial spirit powers, the god-suppressing bell's power only caused Su Fong's body to sway for a moment. In the next moment, he returned to normal. A supreme power of controlling magic treasures exploded from his body and enveloped the god-suppressing bell. Purple Chi Law Spirit. So what if it's a life divine weapon? Take it. Su Fong roared angrily and activated the Purple Chi Law Spirit. The mysterious Purple Chi released a supreme power of controlling. If the universe was compared to a supreme divine weapon, the Purple Chi Law Spirit's supreme power of controlling magic treasures could even control the universe, let alone a supreme divine weapon like the god-suppressing bell. After trembling and struggling, The God-suppressing bell let out a desperate cry and was forcibly taken into the inner world by the purple chi. Then, Su Fang's flaming cloud wings flapped fiercely. Like a flaming cloud, he flew across the sky and blended into the crowd of Kuan Su's divine sect disciples. My God-suppressing bell. Fan Su was like his most beloved woman. No, it was like a part of his life was forcibly taken away. In addition, activating the God-suppressing bell had already consumed a large amount of divine essence, dermic power, and primordial spirit power. In shock and anger, he spat out a mouthful of blood. The other dozen or so Sanskrit geniuses also spat out blood, and their auras quickly withered. Why would Su Fang be polite to Fan Su's natal divine weapon? He immediately released Az from the purple chi space in his body. I have another great tonic to eat. Thank you, master. Az said with a grin. Like a gluttonous naughty girl, she slapped the God-suppressing bell and sucked. Shrouded in a sacred white light, there was a lifelike shadow of Fan Su. It was the vessel spirit of the God-suppressing bell. Because it was a natal divine weapon, the vessel spirit looked exactly like Fan Su. Hiss! The vessel spirit of the God-suppressing bell was directly swallowed into Az's stomach. She patted her belly and licked her lips, as if she was enjoying a delicious meal, but still wanted more. This made Su Fang's yang spirit speechless. The vessel spirit of the purple Chi Dharma spirit was becoming more and more intelligent, just like Yu Miaomei. Then, Su Fang activated the Hunyuan sacred mirror and released the Nine Yang true fire. It enveloped the God-suppressing bell and burned wildly. Streaks of heavenly marks containing blood and Qi emerged from the divine weapon. The blood and Qi were directly refined by the Nine Yang true fire. In this way, Fan Su's natal divine weapon became an ownerless object. No, Fan Su was still holding on to a glimmer of hope that he could take back the God-suppressing bell. Who knew that after being taken away by Su Fang, the connection with the natal divine weapon was immediately cut off. Then, the vessel spirit was devoured and the blood and Qi integrated into the divine weapon was incinerated. This was equivalent to taking away half of his life. This time, Fan Su not only vomited blood, but also the blood from his heart. His primordial spirit was also severely injured. His vision turned black, and he fell to the ground. From the time Su Fang seized the God-suppressing bell to the time of devouring the vessel spirit and refining Fan Su's blood and Qi in the divine weapon, the whole process only took 5 or 6 breaths. Xia Qijuan, Yi Yangkong, and the others' reactions were not slow. After a brief moment of shock, they immediately flew out and tried to suppress the person who seized the God-suppressing bell. After Su Fang escaped into the crowd, he immediately activated the divine life shrinking technique to conceal his presence. After losing the control of the God-suppressing bell, many Kuan Su's divine sect disciples also woke up. They understood what had just happened and were suddenly in a state of chaos. In the chaos of close to 10,000 heaven gods, how could Xia Qijuan and the others find Su Fang's traces? Xia Qijuan colluded with the Sanskrit and other forces to control us. He wants us to die for no reason. Kill him and escape. Su Fang used his perfection stage ability and roared furiously. It was like a thunderclap that exploded in the crowd. Xia Qijuan is deranged. He treats us like dirt. Kill him. Sanskrit's disciples and other forces' geniuses, all of them deserve to die. Furious roars sounded from the crowd. Hatred and murderous intent filled the sky. Xia Qijuan, Fan Su, and the others' methods were simply infuriating. These Kuan Su's divine sect disciples who had woken up were in a state of chaos. How could they not hate them when they were toyed with and almost lost their lives? Close to 10,000 heaven gods were enraged. Among them, there were a few powerful special disciples who were not weaker than Xia Qijuan. Now that they were all enraged and wanted to seek revenge, how terrifying would the scene be? Damn it, why did it turn out like this? Who was that person? He actually stole the God-suppressing bell at the crucial moment and caused this plan to fail on the verge of success. Capture this person. I will pull out his tendons, skin him alive, and burn his corpse to refine his soul. Xia Qijuan, Yi Yankong, and the others were all shocked and terrified. They were all gnashing their teeth. However, the most important thing for them now wasn't to chase after the person who stole the God-suppressing bell, but to consider how to save their lives and not be burned alive by the crowd's anger. Chapter 1900. Xia Qijuan, Fan Su, and the others' meticulous plan, which they thought was perfect, was now completely ruined. Fan Su's life artifact was stolen, and his vitality was greatly damaged. His losses were disastrous. Xia Qijuan was even worse off. If the prehistoric inflammation was successfully captured, Xia Qijuan would get half of it according to the agreement. Xia Qijuan planned to fuse with the earthly flame and borrow this supreme treasure of the great desolate era to rapidly increase his cultivation. He would possess the strength of a god of his own age and also the qualifications to show off in the godchild competition of the Star Billow Divine Realm. At that time, even if tens of thousands of disciples were completely buried, esteemed Kuan Su would not blame him. It had to be said that Xia Qijuan's idea was beautiful, but the reality was so cruel. Now, not only could they not capture the prehistoric inflammation, these crazy Kuan Su divine sect disciples would directly tear him to pieces. Even if he was lucky enough to escape the barrier space and leave the chaos ruins, the anger of esteemed Kuan Su and the upper echelons of the divine sect would burn him to death. Xia Qijuan was in despair, but he suddenly thought of the experience in Kuan Su's divine realm. It was so shockingly similar. Last time, it was because of Mo Fenghua. Who was the person who caused the plan to fail this time? Xia Qijuan, Fan Su Dai. Many Kuan Su divine sect disciples rushed over like angry tides. Run! Xia Qijuan and the others became the target of public criticism. Like stray dogs, they all exploded with their fastest speed, preparing to escape the space where the prehistoric inflammation was sealed. Suddenly, a gloomy and evil laughter came from the body of the prehistoric inflammation. A bunch of low-level existences. You will all become my nutrients. Where do you think you're going? Boom! The evil voice had just finished. The body of the prehistoric inflammation suddenly shattered, turning into a burning blood cloud. With a whoosh, it swept towards the Kuan Su divine sect disciples. The blood cloud wrapped around a dozen disciples, burning fiercely. In a moment of desperation, these disciples all unleashed their most powerful techniques to resist the burning power of the blood flames. Among the dozen over-disciples, there was a powerful special disciple whose strength reached ninth firmament celestial deity, ranking in the top 3 of the special disciples. His strength was very extraordinary. He urged a middle-grade flying sword, releasing a majestic and imposing sword energy akin to toppling mountains and overturning seas, shaking the blood-fire divine might until it rolled. Suddenly, a black Xian Guang rolled out from the bloody flames, dyeing the whole bloody flames pitch black and emitting a strong, evil aura. The powerful special disciple's sword intent shattered layer by layer, followed by his flying sword, which quickly turned into a burst of light, smoke, and drifted between heaven and earth. Within the blood flames of prehistoric inflammation, in addition to the astonishing power of fire, there was also an evil and strange power that could burn everything in the world and return everything to its original state of chaos. Chi! The bloody flames that carried an evil aura suddenly contracted. The defenses of the dozen over-disciples were rapidly incinerated. Following that, their divine bodies were incinerated layer by layer, and then their blood energy was directly devoured by the bloody flames. After this round of devouring, the body of prehistoric inflammation became even more real, looking almost no different from a normal human. It had a rough face, a masculine temperament with a hint of evilness, possessing an astonishing masculine charm. His body was 30 feet tall, and there were 2 incomparably sharp, bloody horns on his forehead, giving people a feeling that they could tear space apart. After condensing a human body, the bloody flames on the body of prehistoric inflammation rolled, automatically condensing into a blood-red robe. It was covered with black demonic patterns, emitting a strange and evil aura. This prehistoric inflammation was already no longer some treasure of heaven and earth nurtured in the primordial world, but an out-and-out flame demon. It's over. The flame demon has successfully condensed a fiend god body. No one here can resist it. A helpless sigh came from Su Feng's body. Su Feng unwillingly asked, "Law, if you use my divine body and use the supreme divine ability of the Azuric divine clan, can you kill this flame demon?" It's very difficult. The demon clan has an incomparably strong vitality, and the flame demon is a very strange and powerful existence in ancient times. He also used a planting method to fuse with prehistoric inflammation. In the depths of this magma, he is almost immortal. It's impossible to kill him. Moreover, if I stimulate the potential of your divine body, it will cause a lot of damage to your divine body and even affect your cultivation foundation. So unless it's a critical moment, it's better not to do so. Also, it's best if you don't use your Origin's sacred mirror. Like when you killed the Blood River Lord's slaughter doppelganger, the result will cause the world of the Chaos Ruins to collapse. If the flame demon takes the opportunity to escape, who knows how many lives will be harmed. Using the divine mirror to release the Nine Yang True Fire is still possible, but the Nine Yang True Fire may not be able to kill the flame demon. Law's words completely dispelled Su Feng's thoughts. He activated his perfect vision and used the Heaven's Secret Life shrinking technique to sense the flame demon's aura. After sensing for a while, Su Feng's eyes suddenly shone. There's actually an aura hidden in the flame demon's god-devil body. It's filled with the aura of primordial and ancient flames. That's prehistoric inflammation. Law was not surprised, and then he suddenly understood. I understand. Prehistoric inflammation was born in the primordial era, far before the flame demon. When the flame demon used a planting method, the prehistoric inflammation had already given birth to self-awareness. Thus, the flame demon was unable to fuse with prehistoric inflammation, and there might even be an intense conflict between the two. Previously, the prehistoric inflammation's divine flame might have absorbed the spirit flames scattered in the chaos ruins in order to resist the flame demon. Obviously, the flame demon succeeded in taking over the body of the prehistoric inflammation, but it was not thorough enough. Moreover, the flame demon's vitality was also greatly damaged, so I sensed that his aura was unstable before, and his strength was far inferior to the legendary peerless demon god. Otherwise, he would have escaped from the chaos ruins long ago. How could he wait for Kuan Su's divine sect to come and capture him? He waited here for the purpose of devouring the blood energy of the gods, recovering his strength, and then rushing out of the seal of the chaos world in one fell swoop. Su Feng estimated that Law's speculation was not far from the truth. Law then sighed. Your destiny theurgy is really powerful. Even I can't sense the weak consciousness of the prehistoric inflammation, but you actually sensed it. Su Feng showed a decisive side. Unable to fuse with the prehistoric inflammation, and in the weakest state, this is the flame demon's fatal weakness, and also my opportunity. Law reminded. You're playing with fire. Be careful that you don't fail to seize the treasure and instead get burned to ashes by the fire. Riches and honor are sought in danger. The more dangerous it is, the greater the fortune obtained. A great fortune is in front of me. If I'm afraid of danger and don't fight for it, it will hurt my luck instead. Su Feng showed determination and decisiveness, so Law stopped persuading her. Just as the two were talking, the prehistoric inflammation, no, the flame demon, turned into a blood cloud and rushed out, devouring dozens of disciples. The entire inside of the barrier space was in chaos. Many Kuan Su's divine sect disciples only cared about running for their lives, and no one chased after Xia Qijuan, Fan Su, and the others. Xia Qijuan and the others quickly came to the formation door of the barrier. Just as they were about to step through the door, Xia Qijuan suddenly turned his head to look at the flame demon, a ruthless look flashing in his deep eyes. I didn't expect that the prehistoric inflammation would turn into such an evil demon. However, this is also the only chance for me, Xia Qijuan, to turn the tables. With this thought, Xia Qijuan suddenly withdrew from the door, and then formed a seal to seal the door again. Xia Qijuan, what are you doing? Jiang Baozhen's expression suddenly changed, and the others were also shocked and stunned, looking at Xia Qijuan in confusion. As long as I walk out of the wilderness ruins, this young master will face the severe punishment of the divine sect, and even the leader will not be able to protect me. The only thing I can do now is to work together to suppress the prehistoric inflammation. Not only will I escape punishment, but I will also have the chance to become an unparalleled expert, Xia Qijuan said coldly, his handsome face appearing incomparably malevolent. Jiang Baozhen turned pale with fright. Xia Qijuan, you're crazy. That prehistoric inflammation was clearly devoured by a demon god, and you're still delusional about suppressing the prehistoric inflammation? Aren't you courting death? If we're going to die, we're going to die together. Everyone work together to suppress the prehistoric inflammation, or else no one will be able to escape death. Xia Qijuan loudly shouted. He then took the lead in controlling his flying sword, exploding with the cultivation of a heavenly deity expert, and attacked the flame demon. Damn Xia Qijuan, he actually wants to drag us down with him. How precious is this young master's life? How can I risk my life to fight a mutated monster? Jiang Baozhen gritted his teeth. Let's make our move. If we don't, the prehistoric inflammation will devour even more Kuan Su divine sect disciples, and no one will be able to suppress it. At that time, we'll all die here. Moreover, Xia Qijuan is right. It's not like we don't have a chance. Yi Yankong was also a decisive person. His figure flashed, and like a whirlwind, he instantly arrived near the prehistoric inflammation and took out a divine artifact. This divine artifact was only at the peak of the middle rank, but it was very unique. It was a large green flag, and after it was activated, it set off a terrifying hurricane and a terrifying aura that could engulf heaven and earth, enveloping the flame demon. Experts from other factions also made their move. Many Kuan Su divine sect disciples also calmed down from their initial panic and began to attack the prehistoric inflammation in an organized manner. Xia Qijuan was a heavenly deity expert. Although he was heavily injured during his breakthrough and had yet to recover and was suppressed by the world seal in the chaos ruins, he could only display the strength of a heavenly deity. But it was far from what a ninth heavenly deity could compare to. Yi Yankong possessed a powerful divine artifact, and his strength was close to Xia Qijuan's. The other geniuses from other factions were also quite strong, and with so many Kuan Su divine sect disciples working together, even the flame demon, who possessed the undying demon god body, couldn't take it. Chapter 1901. Just as everyone was fighting the flame demon, unspecified currency 8, unspecified currency 8, unspecified currency reading, unspecified currency books. Oh, the dozen or so geniuses from Sanskrit remained where they were. Sanskrit, Fan Chong, and the other Sanskrit disciples were all heavily injured, especially Fan Su. His life divine artifact was taken away, and his mind, divine body, and Yuan spirit were all heavily injured. Se Yunji stayed by his side to take care of him. Su Fong was like a ferocious beast waiting for an opportunity to prey. He quietly approached the Sanskrit geniuses, waiting for an opportunity to kill Fan Su, Fan Chong, and the others. As for the flame demon, he would let Xia Qijuan and the others exhaust its strength first, and then find an opportunity to attack. Jiang Baozhen and the experts under him stayed by the barrier door. They had no intention of attacking. Jiang Baozhen hesitated for a moment. Then a sinister smile appeared on his face. This young master's life is very precious. As long as this young master can stay alive, I don't care what happens. You guys can slowly fight against the prehistoric inflammation. This young master won't accompany you. Jiang Baozhen snorted. She flipped her hand and shot out a talisman with a shocking aura of thunder. The talisman fell on the barrier and immediately exploded. The terrifying lightning energy was far beyond what a heavenly god could release. The violent destructive power caused the barrier to tremble violently. The seal was shattered, and a hole was blasted in the powerful barrier. Layers of space also shattered amidst the violent tremors. The natural energy of heaven and earth outside the wilderness ruins rushed in from the shattered space. The power of the talisman's explosion surpassed the heavenly god realm, causing the barrier and seal of the wilderness ruins to shatter. Not only the barrier, but the entire wilderness ruins was on the verge of collapse. This sudden and unexpected event caused all the disciples to be shocked, and then they fell into despair. Su Feng, who was preparing to attack the Sanskrit disciples, was also shocked. Jiang Baozhen, you're too shameless. Xia Qijuan roared. Jiang Baozhen, this young master will kill you. I've lost a talisman worth millions of divine jades. I didn't even get a single strand of prehistoric inflammation. I've suffered a huge loss this time. Jiang Baozhen, on the other hand, cursed in exasperation. She brought her subordinates from the Tong Bao Chamber of Commerce through the hole in the barrier. The Sanskrit disciples and Xia Yunji also took the opportunity to escape. Su Feng thought for a moment and decided to stay inside the barrier. He would first try to suppress the flame demon and seize the prehistoric inflammation. As for killing Fan Su and Fan Chong, there would be plenty of opportunities in the future. In this desperate situation, many Kuan Su's divine sect disciples were still able to work together. However, when they saw that there was a chance to escape, they immediately lost their will to fight. Once again, they were thrown into chaos and swarmed towards the gap in the barrier. The chaos caused by the disciples of Kuan Su's divine sect gave the flame devil an opportunity to break free from everyone's shackles. After devouring dozens of disciples in succession, including a few geniuses from the Hui Feng divine realm and other forces, its aura recovered slightly. Could it be that the heavenly Tao wants to end me? Xia Qijuan? Suppressing the prehistoric inflammation. Xia Qijuan originally thought that there was a chance to suppress the prehistoric inflammation. Who knew that Jiang Baozhen would do something like this? The hope that had just been ignited was completely extinguished by a ladle of ice water. Xia Qijuan could only helplessly sigh. At this time, the situation was hopeless. Xia Qijuan, Yi Yangkong, and the others all fled towards the outside of the barrier. The flame demon laughed maniacally and wantonly killed and devoured. In the blink of an eye, another 100 disciples were killed. The flame demon once again began to condense the demon god's body. The barrier created by Kuan Su and the other higher-ups of Kuan Su's divine sect had the ability to recover. The gap created by Jiang Baozhen's explosion was quickly closing. Most of the Kuan Su's divine sect disciples escaped the barrier. The thousands of disciples who were left behind were crazily chased by the flame demon and had no chance to escape. Just as these disciples were in despair, Qi, an arrow that emitted resplendent golden light and carried the sun god's might that could dispel all evil auras, shot into the flame demon's body. Like a sun suddenly exploding, the incomparably ferocious flame demon was also blasted until the bloody flames all over its body surged. The bloody flames were burned and refined layer by layer by layer by the sun god's might, instantly weakening by quite a bit. The remaining thousands of Kuan Su's divine sect disciples finally had a chance to catch their breath. They took the opportunity to break away from the flame demon's pursuit and work together to temporarily stabilize the shrinking gap in the barrier. At this time, Su Feng's flaming cloud wings flapped and flew into the sky. He shot out hundreds of runes in the air, enveloping the flame demon and bombarding it indiscriminately. These runes were all extremely powerful. They exploded time and time again, causing the world seal of the wilderness ruins to shatter time and time again. Damned human, I will refine your bloody chi and use the devil flame poison to burn your primordial spirit for eternity. Ah! The flame demon was stunned by this sudden ferocious attack and burst out roars. At this time, The remaining Kuan Su's divine sect disciples all escaped from the inner space of the barrier. A dozen or so special disciples were the last to leave the barrier. Among them, a powerful special disciple with red hair shouted towards Su Fangda, "Senior brother, leave this place. We will cover your retreat." They had already recognized that Su Fang was the expert who had previously stolen Fan Su's natal divine artifact and helped them break free from his control. Su Fang was currently dressed in the attire of a Kuan Su's divine sect disciple. They even thought that Su Fang was a hidden powerful figure in the divine sect. If we let this devil god kill his way out, the consequences will be unimaginable. I will stall this devil here. You guys go out and reseal the barrier. Then, ask for help from the divine sect's upper echelons. Su Fangda waved his hand and said very decisively. These special disciples were not shocked at all. Instead, they were all filled with deep veneration and uniformly bowed towards Su Fang. The revered red disciple cupped his fists. "Senior brother, may I ask which Dao Hall of Kuan Su's divine sect you are from? What is your name? If you can survive, I will definitely repay you in the future. If you encounter misfortune, the divine sect will definitely erect a monument for you. Generations to come, we will never forget your righteous act of sacrificing your life to save others." Erect a monument for me? Su Fang was both shocked and stunned. He had originally planned to stay here and suppress the flame demon while it was heavily injured and weak. With so many Kuan Su's divine sect disciples present, Su Fang naturally could not reveal some of his secret methods. Moreover, if these disciples would stay here, they would instead become nourishment for the flame demon to become stronger. It was because of these reasons that Su Fang acted to stop the flame demon and let these disciples escape. How was this sacrificing his life to save others? Since he had been misunderstood, then he might as well let them misunderstand. Su Fang did not explain. His facial muscles and bones wriggled, returning to Mo Fenghua's appearance. Then he righteously said, "This one is Mo Fenghua, the young master of Xianling Dao Hall. In the past, I have brought many troubles to the divine sect and many disciples. This time, I have the opportunity to contribute my meager strength to the divine sect and my fellow senior brothers. Even if I die, I have no regrets." Mo Fenghua, the dozen or so special disciples instantly turned into ice sculptures. In the past, they had only occasionally heard of the name Mo Fenghua and his misdeeds. However, at that time, they had only treated it as a joke. He was only a hedonistic son of rich parents. Why would the special disciples take him seriously? Later, Su Fang challenged all the official disciples, causing a commotion. Then, he was highly regarded by the three divine kings. Only then did his name rise in Kuan Su's divine sect, becoming known to everyone. However, these special disciples only treated him as a guy with heaven-defying luck. They definitely did not take him seriously. It was only when the Wilderness Ruins trial began and Su Fang and Fan Chong clashed that Mo Fenghua's name was taken seriously by the divine sect disciples. Who would have thought? The person who stole Fan Su's divine weapon and saved everyone's lives. Now, the person who risked his life to save them was actually Mo Fenghua. The surprise and shock in these special disciples' hearts could be imagined. They felt that the entire world was in chaos. At this time, the power of the rune talisman explosion had already dissipated. The flame devil, who had been ravaged by the rune talisman, was thoroughly enraged. It madly pounced at Su Fang. "Why haven't you left yet?" Su Fang coldly shouted at the special disciples in a domineering manner. He once again shot out over 100 rune talismans. As a result, the Balrog once again fell into an earth-shattering explosion. Who would have thought that the rumored junior martial brother Mo was actually such an indomitable and mighty man? I will never forget this great favor of saving me today. The dozen or so special disciples once again bowed deeply at Su Fang. Then they passed through the gap in the barrier. Not long after they left, the barrier rapidly closed and sealed the space within. Lowly, insignificant human, I will definitely The power of the rune talisman explosion had just weakened when the flame devil's roar rang out once again. However, it was clearly much weaker this time. You talk too much nonsense. Su Fong bluntly shot out one rune talisman after another. There was another big explosion, and the flame devil's voice was drowned out. This flame devil, who had fused with the prehistoric inflammation, possessed incomparably powerful strength. However, it was currently being ravaged crazily by a sixth firmament true god, who was like an ant in his eyes. It was not hard to imagine the anger and depression in his heart. In fact, Su Fong was also in great pain at this time. What he threw out was not some rune talisman, but piles of divine jade treasures. Although he was in pain, this flame devil was incomparably powerful. It might have even more powerful and evil means. Su Fong did not dare to hold back at this time. He first used the rune talisman to indiscriminately bombard the flame devil to consume a portion of its strength. ////. However, Su Fong's crazy bombardment was also extremely risky. It put the Chaos Ruins in an extremely dangerous situation. The Chaos Ruins was a world that Guru Kuan-Su had invited a supreme expert to create using divine abilities and formations. When the prehistoric inflammation was born, the power of transformation caused the world to become unstable. The power of Su Fong's rune talisman had already exceeded the limits of what the world could bear. It caused the world seal to shatter and cracks to appear in the space. What Su Fong did not know was that his crazy actions had caused all the higher-ups of Kuan-Su's divine sect to tremble in fear. Guru Kuan-Su, the Great Elder, the Elders, and even the three Divine Kings and the Great Elder of the Star Billow Divine Realm all took action to reinforce the world seal. Only then did they prevent the world from shattering. Kuan-Su, let me in.